Oh my god, everyone. It's that time again. It's episode 87 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. Not to suggest that we've ever actually done an 87th episode of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast prior to this, thus the whole "it's that time again" statement being a little bit redundant. But on the topic of things that could be perceived as being a little redundant, I have, of course, my good buddy Phil to introduce.
I'm hurt. I'm hurt.
I say this, Phil, because you were no use to me whatsoever when we played against the good people of Rapid Fire Wargaming this weekend. I
feel like, well, you're letting people in for a surprise there, I think. They're going to
potentially.
Pleasantly surprised.
Exactly. Who knows what the outcome of that game would have actually been until they've obviously watched it.
Well, so people can find out because so we played a game on Saturday against the Rapid Fire Wargaming boys, Phil, and Tommy, and it's now up on their YouTube channel, so people can go check it out at Rapid Fire Wargaming. They can watch us, they can see our faces for a change, and put a face to a voice. And I had Krieg, you had Custodes, they had Chaos Knights and Chaos Demons, a lot of kind of greater demon type monsters. Yes, people can go watch it. No spoilers here, of course.
No, we would not ever dream of such a thing. But no, I had a contingency of Custodes painted by Red Fuzzy Paints, the guy that I got those Custodes from. He's a lovely lad. Tom's his name. I think they do a YouTube channel as well called like Garage Hammer Tactics, I think is what it's called. But yeah, so I got a Custodes army courtesy of Tom a couple of years ago. So I thought I'd break that out and throw some dice with it to, coincide with Phil and his beautiful Krieg. So we had a really beautifully painted selection and what was actually a really entertaining game. Even if, my haircut made me look a little bit like Gary Oldman from Fifth Element.
Oh, I like your haircut. It's very The Expanse is what I would say. Very sci-fi futuristic haircut. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It's one of those things that I sort of administered it myself, and then I don't really possess the skill to deal with the nonsense that's going on at the top. So I just kind of shaved the hair high, and then was like, "What do I do with the rest of it?" So I really need to go to an actual professional at some point and have it cut to an appropriate length to manage that style more appropriately. But whatever the case, that was the only thing of note, was me looking at myself going, "Wow, I look like that guy from the Fifth Element." Good get.
I discovered something interesting. I haven't finished watching it because I watched a bit of the game to see how it looked on camera, for example. And my first few rolls are traditionally you had a dice tray there, but weirdly I didn't use it. So my first few rolls on the mat, bouncing around as normal, terrible dice rolls as I normally roll. However, the moment I start using your dice tray, oh my god, my rolls are just like on fire, and it was like the best rolls I ever did in any game ever. So I thought that was quite interesting because that's what I felt like had happened during the game. And then watching it back, I was like, oh no, that there's a distinct change between your dice box and you're not using your dice box. So what I'm saying, Dan, is I need your dice box.
Well, that's fair enough, mate. You can make me a completely fair offer for it. I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time positioning magnets in just such a way as it, interrupts the field and gives me the best possible results. That's obviously how you were obviously rolling hot, as it were. But yeah, no, it's I suppose it does make a difference. But on the topic of making a difference, Phil, although I don't think this is actually on that topic at all, I was just really clutching at straws. What are we going to talk about this episode, Phil? There you go.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go into a 5-star review. I thought that would have been an excellent
No, because we're supposed to do that thing where we introduce what we're talking about and then we do the 5-star review.
I know. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a follow-up from the last episode in terms of Index Astartes. We missed one out, dear listeners. So we're going to talk about the Silver Templars. That's going to be a whole segment of itself. in and of itself. And then we're also talking about the announced Warhammer Grand Tournament sort of a series of events that's going to happen over in the Americas, along with a brief chat about what they've talked about so far with the GT mission pack that they've announced.
That is completely correct. But before we get to that, Phil, it is, of course, time for a 5-star review.
Well, howdy, partner. These boys keep joshing us about with all their chitter-chatter about little plastic figurines. They've asked me to do this jingle for them. I don't know what they're talking about half the time. But anyway, now it's time for that 5-star review. Thanks for listening and enjoy the rest of the show. And let's all pray that it doesn't go on as long as it did last week. Yeehaw!
This week's 5-star reviews comes from where, Phil?
Do you know what? You're going to trick me this time. Is it the Facebooks?
You are 100% correct, Phil. It's almost like we discussed this now before we actually get into it, thus making me asking this question entirely redundant, if not exclusively only being done for the format of the section.
I'd actually completely forgotten where you said it was going. So it was a guess.
Well, there you go. I can believe that, to be fair. So you've convinced me, if nothing else. But on the topic of people we've convinced, Phil, you obviously being one such person with the gift of convincing, we have obviously passed on the powers to a gentleman by the name of Mike. We have elected from here on in to stop using their full names when they do Facebook reviews, because it seems a little bit untoward to just advertise the existence of full names over the format that is this show. Although I suppose they gave us a 5-star review, so can't be that bad.
It's not to cover up the fact that it's just our friends leaving us reviews, and people might be able to tell that quite easily.
Well, in a way, though, Phil, aren't all our listeners our friends, right? Because, in a way, they sort of know us in a strange way, right? Like they have an odd familiarity with us that obviously we don't have with them, which is weird when you think about it, right? That obviously some people will have listened to a lot of us and will have gained some sort of affinity with us that is not reciprocated.
It is reciprocated, of course it is. I'm sure I saw a meme recently, and I think one of our listeners maybe sent it to me. I can't remember. It was basically these two ladies eating like cornettos, but they were doing it in front of like an ad of two ladies eating cornettos, and they're obviously so it looked like they were facing each other and hanging out, and it was like me when I listened to the Look Outside podcast. And I was like, this is totally true.
I haven't eaten a cornetto in such a long time, Phil.
I haven't either.
No. But I imagine when the day comes that I re-encounter them, I will be excited by the whole experience. It'll be a thing of joy. Anyway, Mike has left us a 5-star review via our Facebook page, which is one of the various places where you can leave us 5-star reviews if you would like to do so. Noting that obviously the 5-star review is a prerequisite of appearing here within the 5-star review segment. Noting, though, that we would probably read you out if you actually said horrible things about us, because we're not trying to, filter or weight this in any way, shape or form, but as not a prerequisite, but as a sort of knock-on effect of calling out 5-star reviews, we seem to attract a lot of them. So it's a nice benefit, isn't it, Phil?
Well, exactly. I mean, you're more than welcome to say mean things about us in a 5-star review. We do get that from time to time. Slightly jaded, yes. Sarcastic comments, maybe. Maybe it's just constructive criticism. Maybe we need to take it on board with the positive intent that it was hopefully meant in.
That's true. That's true. Although we will never change, right? It doesn't matter what you say. We will continue to do what we've been doing for as long as we've been doing it. For we are, pig-headed that way.
Oh.
Yes, that'll be in there too. That too. Anyway, what has Mike said, Phil? I'll tell you. He said this. I listen to a lot of podcasts at work, which is, obviously a worthwhile thing to do, both at jobs and driving to them, which implies, obviously, that this individual does something with their hands. A man of, skills and talents when it comes to fixing stuff, I would assume. Wouldn't you say so, Phil?
On the tape.
There we go. Basically, I listen to them all day, but I'm ashamed to say I had never tried Lookout Sir until they were recommended to me some weeks back. Now I've listened to a good many episodes. I'm gutted because I hadn't been listening to them all this time. Well, that's a lovely thing to say, isn't it? Although you're lucky in so much as you are, riding high in the honeymoon period. This is the early days of the relationship. So you're binging on the show, you're enjoying it. Whereas obviously people who have been with us for 3 years now, they're starting to get a bit of that, of that 3-year itch, as it were. They're starting to look at other podcasts and starting to think, oh, maybe it's better elsewhere. So, in a way, it's, this is when the light burns brightest, right, Phil?
If you say so. I guess.
You don't understand the origins of the analogy, though, right? I mean, I've not just gone off on a weird tangent there that bears no resemblance to anything else, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Good. This is why you weren't missing much, mate. Anyway, the podcast has the perfect mix of both facts, either that or they're doing a convincing job of winging it, which
yes,
yes, very much so. And comedy. Again, it's obviously really lovely to hear what we produce as being referred to as comedy, which means that we are at least coming across as being intentionally funny rather than just being a little bit hopeless. And thus, as a result, the humor, is produced. I highly recommend giving these guys a try and let their ramblings fill your ears to help you get through the working day. 5 stars. So there you go. Thank you so much, Mike. That is a really lovely review, and it's obviously really appreciated that you are enjoying the show and you felt compelled to leave us this 5-star review. Massively appreciate it, mate. And obviously, I hope you're enjoying hearing yourself being shouted out and praised by us as you're hopefully, driving safely to and from whatever jobs you may do. But to enhance that, to add extra flavor to the overall sentiment, here's Phil.
Dear Mike, the handyman, we appreciate your nice, classic, positive review, full of kindness, full of love. We appreciate it very much. Obviously, you're binging on us at the moment, 24/7. We must be appearing in your dreams, saving you from your nightmares. And then one day you will run out of podcasts to listen to, and you'll just have to wait a whole silent week until the next Lookout Sir episode appears. And that will be a sad time. We will be here for you when that happens, though. Just look us up. You can message us. You can reach out, and we will be there for you for that virtual hug that you will need.
I feel like that got a very, unnecessarily real there, Phil. It was like you were offering him some kind of
special service.
Like some sort of phone service where he could call up and, talk to you about his deepest emotions.
That is my side hustle, the Lookout hotline. Where anyone wants to basically for £1 a minute they get a free solo episode of a Look Outside podcast. They can just listen to me talk about 40k to them. They can't talk to me though. It's a one-way phone call though. That's how it works.
Is that how it is? It's like the Corey hotline from an early Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
Here's some things that rhyme with Corey. Or with Phil in this instance.
Bill.
Exactly. Bill does rhyme with Phil. There we go.
Well,
I'm glad that we established that. Anyway, there you go. That was our 5-star review segment. If you would like to be featured here, and why wouldn't you? Just leave us a 5-star review. And at some point in the future, we'll get around to shouting you out, because that is our mission, to review all of the 5-star reviews and to continue podcasting until we run out. The day we don't have a 5-star review is the day we pack up and give up all this nonsense. Right, Phil?
Yes.
That's how it goes. Although to, circumnavigate that, we'll probably just write our own or just encourage family members to do it because,
Exactly. We'll have personal friends on Facebook called Mike. Leave us reviews on Facebook.
That's what it's already come to. It's like, oh no, we're running out.
Exactly.
I'm going to have to stop all of this. Although maybe it would be good. I often wonder what I'm going to do when the day finally comes that this ends, because it has become such a thing of my week. The idea of not doing it anymore is quite bizarre.
Well, imagine if one of us has a terrible accident, such as me, and would you just carry on without me?
Well, we carried on without Joe.
Yeah, but he left. Imagine I have a tragic accident and I pass away.
I try not to imagine that, Phil. I don't really want to even sort of start to speculate.
No, but would you carry on? Would you rebrand? Would you just be?
Would I go on without you?
Would you go on without me? Yeah.
Oh, here's the thing, Phil. What would you want? What would you want me to do?
I want you to do a solo show, but every episode you do a seance so I can come and join you via the medium of rustling paint pots like this. Oh, he said
I
yes.
feel like
He agrees with me.
I feel like that's more me channeling Joe, but also I worry about the implications of, what that might mean to like your family and loved ones, where it's like, so that twit that you used to do a podcast with is now apparently seancing are now apparently in your scenario deceased son, husband, loved one. I feel like that's probably a little bit insensitive to you, but you have specifically asked for it, so that is
I'll put it
what I'm going to do. You put it in your will. Dan must continue to produce episodes of Lookout Sir, pretending to channel my spirit through some kind of theatrical means.
Or you could actually do it. You could become a warlock or something and just make it happen.
I mean, if it was within my power to do so, Phil, I would do so. Although I do have to admit I have a certain level of skepticism about the relative, possibilities.
I like the idea more then that you're just faking it for the listeners.
I mean...
Because poor Mike, he needs it.
He does need it. Maybe that's what Mike's doing. Maybe your soul is already being channeled through some Ouija board apparatus with Mike somewhere. I don't know if I said apparatus correct there, and I've said it again that way. It should be apparata. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's get on with it. Transitional noise. Woo! All right, everyone. In this part of the podcast, we're going to be revisiting a chapter, a Index Astartes that we overlooked when doing the White Dwarf Index Astartes supplements in episode 86. We missed one, Phil. Can you believe it?
I can, because this issue was buried deep in a stack of White Dwarf issues tucked out the way, whereas the ones that I actually got out for the episode were all close to hand, loitering close to my bed for reading time.
Well, there you go. We did have some comments. Obviously some Silver Templar fans were out there and were outraged at our blatant slight, as it were, our abusive nature towards the beloved Silver Templars. So we are now seeking to rectify our mistake, and we'll now go through the business of talking about Silver Templars. But what are Silver Templars, Phil? I have never heard of them.
Well, they're effectively a brand new or relatively new chapter. I think actually, I don't know if they were actually created by him, but popularized, I believe, by Darren Latham. I could be wrong, but he was famous for doing a very silver color scheme. So could have been him. Not entirely sure. Maybe we should have fact checked this beforehand. But
is there not documentation within the pages of White Dwarf that give them some sort of place of origin other than just?
Well, yeah, lore-wise, there's a bit more. They're one of those Ultima founding chapters. So part of the created for the Indomitus Crusade. They're an Ultramarine successor chapter. They are Primaris only chapter, which you will see reflected in their rules. I had a quick read of the initial bit where it says a lot of the Ultramarine successor chapters tend to have Gilliman's sort of pious nature, being a bit of a goody two shoes, by the book type people, whereas these take his sort of fierce warrior aspects. They're all about being duelists. They're like master craftsmen. They each like to kind of maintain their own weapons, and once they've kind of bonded with the weapon, to lose it is a great shame. So they're much more
sounds more like a salamander.
Well, a bit of salamander, a bit of blood angels in there in terms of being much more kind of close combat orientated in nature.
Magical times. So they're not just Black Templars painted silver. There's something else entirely, essentially.
I believe so. Yeah.
Is there any stipulation, though, noting that this is an Ultima founding chapter and is made up of entirely Primaris? Do you have to take only Primaris with this chapter, or can you still miraculously find yourself with some Firstborn?
Well, there's some designer notes which I can read out, which will explain all. I'll just clarify for those listening along. This is from issue 456. If you would like to purchase it, I'm sure you can do that. Otherwise, we'll just tell you all about it.
Are you sure? Is back catalogue a thing that's readily available?
It used to be, or whether it
It
is
used to
anymore.
be.
It used to be. I mean, if we fact check these things, we would know. But it used to
There
be.
you go. There you go. So you've gone from saying you're sure they can do this to I'm not sure at all in the blink of an eye, essentially.
I remember being able to do it in the past, and it was one of those weird things where they had an app where you could buy EPUB versions of it, and then they kind of got rid of that, and then they didn't for a while do an EPUB version at all. And then I think the last year or so they've brought that back, so there should be digital versions of it that are available.
There you go. There are many things you used to be able to do in the past, Phil. And on the topic of pubs, smoking in pubs, that was one such thing.
That was from many years ago.
I know, it is actually quite a long time ago since I had to deal with, coming home from a nightclub and, showering in the morning to have the stench of cigarette smoke waft across my eyes. What a lovely way to wake up that was. I'm sure you experienced that, right, Phil?
I did. It was painful.
Thank God that's gone.
Exactly.
What are those designer notes, though? Phil?
So the designer notes, it says the Silver Templars chapter was founded during the Ultima founding. 1 point for me for getting that correct. And their ranks are made up entirely of Primaris Space Marines. 2 points, if you're keeping track. And their ranks are made up entirely Primaris Space Marines. I've reread that bit, so -1 point. As such, when building their army, we encourage players to only include Primaris Space Marines in their force. Note, however, that this does not encompass the wide range of powerful support pieces that these mighty warriors are known to field, such as the the Repulsor Executioner. Okay, that I thought there would be a bit more of a follow-up conclusion to that sentence, but no, that's it. So it just says mostly Primaris in force.
It's weird as well that they've stated that this does not encompass the wide range of power support pieces that they might that their mighty warriors are known to field, such as the Repulsor Executioner. That's very strange because that is a Primaris vehicle. It's not like they went such as whirlwinds.
Yes, yeah, it's a bit odd. If they had said something Forge Worldy or I don't know, it's a bit odd. I'm almost more confused by that statement than less, which is odd because obviously in the pages you get things like the Repulsor Executioner being visible. So
there you go.
Strange.
Very odd. But the point is that Games Workshop are further encouraging you. I like that statement that they encourage you to use only Primaris Space Marines, which is essentially what Games Workshop are doing across the entire Space Marine range at this point. But
except for the rules for Vanguard vets, for example, because they're very good.
That is true.
I'm going to say this now. I don't think Darren Latham did Silver Templars. I think the color scheme that he did was slightly different. But I believe Silver Templars probably first appeared in. I don't think they were in Conquest, but I don't think that's where they first appeared. But Conquest magazine did. If you got the subscription only version, you had an option of buying the Silver Templars like upgrade pack, which had the transfer sheet in, paint guide, and some other bits and bobs. So I think that's where they're most popularized. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Silver Templars. I mean, it sounds pretty good. Will we be getting the gold, bronze, and/or I don't know, other precious metal Templars at some point in the future?
Black Templars.
Like Black Templars, yes, absolutely. Although I wasn't familiar with the idea that black was a precious metal.
Coal.
Oh, yes, there we go. The Coal Templars. That would be quite a good one. That's what we should have them called from here on in. Anyway, Silver Templars have the Bond of Material. Oh, no, sorry, Martial? Martial. I can't speak.
Martial.
You.
The Bond
Is that
Martial.
what it says? The Bond Martial? That's a terrible name for a chapter tactic, the Bond Marshal. What does that all mean?
Well, I'll read the flavor text for a change. It says, the warriors of a Silver Templars chapter form a spiritual bond with their machine spirits of their favored weapons. Another point. Viewing their blades, bolt rifles, and so forth like trusted familiars than mere tools of war. The synergy leads them near preternatural skills at arms.
I'm glad you read that there, Phil. I mean, God, I got
completely
tongue. Yeah, well, I got all mucked up with Marshall. What the heck was I going to do with preternatural or whatever it was you just said?
Well, no, you got it right. Preternatural. Yeah.
Preternatural?
Preternatural.
Oh, preternatural. There we go. It sounded like you said preternatural the second time around.
Peter au natural.
Exactly. If you say it quickly enough and with enough authority, no one will question you, right? You just got to kind of,
That's how it works when it comes to rules, isn't it, Dan?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's always been my my overarching thing. I am worried about this ongoing kind of internal joking because I've made like a handful of very honest mistakes in recent games that I'm some kind of, awful cheat that always gets everything wrong. But I do understand where that comes from. It's fine. Jealousy is jealousy is a mask that eats away at the face, Phil.
If you say so. I'll wear that with pride.
There we go. Although I think that was actually Barry from Extras, or previously EastEnders, then Extras, and his line about fame, not necessarily jealousy, but anyway, felt appropriate for the moment.
Should we get on with the Bond the Bond Marshal?
You were just saying that to further insult me. I understand, Phil. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, why not? So apparently each time a model with this tactic makes melee attacks against infantry or biker units, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically wounds the target, which is strange, Phil, because he said it was all about vehicles.
No, it wasn't about vehicles at all.
But the notion was that this is something to do with them being... spiritual bond with their machine spirits.
No, not machine spirits, with their favoured weapons. And it talks about blades, bolt rifles, and so forth. So it's talking about their actual guns and weapons, not vehicles per se.
Oh, I see. See, I heard machine spirit, and then I immediately just, zoned out for the rest of it and was like, oh, yeah, that'll be tanks and stuff. But no. So just any old thing hitting on a 6, auto wounds.
Yeah, that's right.
That's actually pretty strong because there's a stratagem specifically for Primaris Marines that gives you that ability. I think it's only a 1 CP stratagem, but the idea that your entire army can do this, all of a sudden, things like, assault intercessors become quite hilarious, right? Because you can just hoof them in and do an absolute truckload of attacks with their chainswords, and you'll probably roll a very decent amount of 6s in that, which will go straight through to automatically wounding. So if you're nipping at the heels of Mortarion or some kind of toughness 8 thing.
Because it only works against infantry or bikers.
Oh, Phil. You're bringing me down from grace here, so it doesn't work on vehicles or monsters?
No.
Oh.
So, therefore, what would have been a really good rule is an okay rule, because most infantry and bikers, yes, you might get toughness 5 stuff, so you're wounding on 5s normally. So, yeah, it's okay, but ultimately not super awesome.
Well, there we go. Still, interesting. It's always good to get freebie wounds and stuff. The less dice you roll, the better, although that's not technically true. The more dice you roll, the better. But the more dice resulting in things happening without the need to roll further dice, the better. But that didn't really flow quite as, completely as the first statement. What's the next bit of their abilities, Phil?
Certainly. So that was part 1 of 2. Part 2 is each time a unit with this tactic is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll 1 hit roll when resolving the unit's attacks.
Okay, so that is 1/2 of Master Artisans or Master Crafters, if you're a Craftworld Aeldari player, such as myself. So you're not re-rolling the wound, although I don't think Salamanders re-roll the wounds anymore. I can't remember. But irrespective, or did they not re-roll the hits? Whichever way it works. Yeah, it's all right, isn't it? It's good. Getting a free re-roll per unit for to hit roll, it's pretty solid. Especially if you've got, I don't know, a captain with a plasma pistol that you feel like overcharging, because captains with plasma pistols can't re-roll ones for themselves. So should you be mad enough to take a plasma pistol on a captain and seek to overcharge it? Useful.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, interesting. It works really well on firstborn, like tactical squads where you've got a special weapon in that squad. Less so on Primaris, which is what you meant to take it on, because they don't really.
I suppose you've got your underslung grenade launcher ting.
True, and you've got your heavy bolter, I guess, and your heavy intercessors. But overall, they all are equipped with the same weapon.
That's true, actually, because the heavy bolter and the heavy intercessor squad can use a Hellfire round, which is a 1-shot D3 mortal wounds. So being able to reroll that is pretty tidy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why heavy intercessors are actually quite interesting, because they actually have some of that kind of tactical squad variety to them. Obviously not to the same extent as a tactical squad, but the fact that you've got a guy with a better version of a gun in the squad does make rules like this quite viable or quite interesting.
I think, going off topic, that's something they've also done with the Eradicators, where you can upgrade one to have the multi-melter rather than the Eradicator rifle. So I think maybe they've gone, we need to go back to that kind of, one can be upgraded to a bit more of a souped-up weapon. Ultimately, it's the same type of weapon, but so yeah. It's not.
It would be nice to see them add heavy bolters to intercessor squads. I'd be well up for that.
Oh, I don't think I like it as it is. Actually, it's more heresy style where they're all equipped with the same stuff.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. They've got relics as well, though, right, Phil? I mean, should we just say, in terms of the bond of Marshall, I would argue that it's not that great overall, but I mean, it's not useless, right? I mean, you can find a use for almost anything, I suppose, but I don't know. It's interesting. The melee attacks auto-winding on 6s is intriguing, if not a bit frustrating, because it only affects infantry or biker units. Where that would be super helpful is if it extended a vehicle, to all units, but obviously that might be a bit too powerful, so I understand that. But the reroll in one hit roll, I actually quite like overall. I think it's the first part of it that lets it down a little, but the second part is relatively good. So yeah, I don't know. I think overall, middling to bad, I would say, as a chapter tactic. What's your vibe on it, Phil?
Yeah, it's kind of okay. I think when you're looking at kind of close combats orientated chapters, you're going to go for Blood Angels or White Scars, maybe even
or Emperor's Spears.
Yes, or Space Wolves, for example. So when you compare it to those, they're probably not that great.
Well, because the Emperor's Spears got the +1 to charges and auto extra hits on 6s, right?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's what we said last week. You'd think we remember these things a week removed. But anyway.
We need to fact check these things.
Exactly. I'll just thrown it out there as a statement of relative fact, and can't in any way support my claim. But I do believe that was the way that that they functioned, the old Emperor's Spears. So compared to the Emperor's Spears, so add 1 to the advanced and charge rolls made for units with the tactics. Each time model would attack to make a melee attack, and the model unit made a charge move, was charged or performed a heroic intervention. An unmodified hit roll of a 6 scores 1 additional hit, Phil. So yes, I was right. Look at that. I'm not wrong all the time, Phil. Eh?
Well, that's good to know.
Exactly. Even a broken watch is right twice a day.
Exactly.
So compared to that, I'd say it's worse than Emperor's Spears, but yeah, middling.
Well, let's go on to the relics. And there's the Armor of Zenaris. Now these, and there's the Banner of Echoes, both of them have very chunky flavor text. Bigger than I've ever seen, so much so they take up half a page. So we're not reading them, because that'd be crazy. But the rules for the Armor of Zenaris... Oh, go on.
I mean, who is Zenaris? Is he anyone of note?
He's the chapter master. If I read this very quickly, strode into the heart battle on enemy. He was unstoppable, and he fought a foul demon prince, and his warrior's blade tore it apart, and his brothers covered the creatures disgusting. There's some weird stinking fluids involved. He emerged unscathed. His own courage and fortitude formed an alloy in that moment with loyal machine spirit in his armor. Determined shield to the wearer from harm. The boon of protection has persisted since this day and is conveyed to any who don the armor of Zenaris. So it's the chapter master's own armor that somehow forged with some demon goo and gives him some extra special protection. There we go.
Well, there we go. You always got to have your extra protection when mucking around in goo. That's exactly what I understand. There's a lot more worse jokes that could be made in that context, but I'm going to keep it, PG. What does it do, though, the armor of Zenaris and his protections?
It is a Primaris model only that it affects each time an attack with an armor penetration characteristic of -1 or -2 is allocated to bearer. The AP characteristic is changed to 0 instead. And each time the bearer would lose a wound as a result of mortal wound on a 6+, it is ignored. I think the first part is very good. The second part, if it was a 5+, it'd be very good. But a 6+,
Well,
it's okay.
Here's the thing, though, Phil. Right, having a relic that both gives you ignoring -1, -2, and 6+ to ignore mortal wounds is actually very strong, because typically I would have only expected to have gotten one of these things, although I would argue that neither of these things is crazy strong within the realms of a relic, but having the two of them does level out to give you something quite useful. Where I become a little bit kind of cagey, I suppose, is that ultimately you want to be in a situation where you maybe have a relic that does one thing good rather than, two things all right. The interesting thing with this guy is that it's a Primaris only model, right? And I can't think of off the top of my head, with maybe one exception. Actually, yes, I can. With the exception of Primaris Tech Marines, I can't think of any model that is Primaris that has a 2+ armor save natively.
Blade Guard Captain.
Blade Guard Captain doesn't get it natively, has a 2+ because of the Storm Shield.
But then obviously any minuses, once you hit -3, you're hitting it on your Inbun save anyway, which is 4+, right? Yep. But I believe the Captain already has ignore mortal wounds on a 5+ built into it.
Captains don't have that built in. Not natively.
Oh, I thought his fancy shield did something like that, as in addition to
the relic shield. You are right. Yes, no, you are right. So if you are taking what's that? Sorry.
I was just saying, if you do put it on him, it's a really good buff with the sort of 2+ save that you can get, but then you're probably ignoring that mortal wounds bit. Let me have a quick look. See what it says.
I suppose the thing is, though, if you're in cover, obviously you're going to get that 2+ armor save, and you're going to be ignoring those -2s. Because, I guess the thing is that given that all captains have 4+ inbuns, if you get shot in the open, well, you're ignoring -2, 3, 4, 5, 6 anyway, because you've got that 4+ invuln. Unless, of course, obviously you're getting attacked by something that ignores your invulnerable saves, in which case, obviously, then it becomes useful. But just trying to think of examples of.
I was going to say the Relic Shield, you ignore mortal wounds on a 4+.
Wow.
Which is really good.
There is a rule that I have forgotten to use on more than one occasion. Well, that's good. Yeah, no, I think. Yeah, because you're probably going to want to take it with the Blade Guard Captain, just so as you've got the 2+ natively, so you're getting the most benefit out of it. Because obviously, -1 would take you to 3. But you're not even getting the benefit anyway, even if you got 2+, right? Because you go from 2+ to 3+ to 4+, so you're just on your invuln anyway. So even if you've got a 2+, it doesn't matter.
What about I was going to say a captain in cover, because he's got a 1+.
Well, then only if he's the Blade Guard Captain.
Yeah.
Who's their successor? What do they come from? It's
Ultramarines,
isn't it? Oh, right. Okay, so it's not even like that you can go, and it doesn't matter even if they were a Raven Guard successor, because they're not going to get the Raven Guard abilities because they've got the bonds of material. I know it's martial. I just did it for a joke that time. Not a very funny joke, but I did it anyway. I struggle now, actually, because when you actually think about it in practical terms, unless you're going to get shot at or fought against something that ignores your invuns. I mean, sure, if a Nightbringer comes up to you, I think they ignore invuns, whatever, but you're just going to die anyway. It's
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you got something with a 5+ invuln, then it balances out a bit better. Or maybe it's a good option with a standard 3+ save, or with no invuln. So regular captain, maybe, for example, or Primaris lieutenant, for example.
All captains have 4+ invuns.
Okay.
So it's literally a lieutenant. You could chaplains have 4+ invuns, so that it's not worth putting on then. Apothecaries, it'd be good on apothecaries. It'd be good on ancients. Yeah, any librarian, actually. Librarian would be all right with this. Having the ability to ignore mortal wounds on a librarian is actually all right. Yeah, the one thing you don't want to put this on is a captain, basically, because it's just loaded with redundancies. You're much better off just taking a Blade Guard captain with his regular relic shield and some other relic than you are taking this.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I'd say off to a bad start so far. But what's the Banner of Echoes all about?
So that is a Primaris Ancient model only. Once per battle in your command phase, the bearer can use this relic. If it does so, it gains the following aura ability until the next command phase. So it's the Banner of Nechthys, which is while a friendly Silver Templar's Primaris core unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, add 1 to the attack's characteristic for that unit. So you get a 6-inch aura that lasts a turn that gives you +1 attack.
So,
and that's a once per game ability.
Yeah, that you have to activate in a command phase. So you essentially have to have orchestrated a situation where your ancient, and this is me assuming you're using a regular ancient, not a Blade Guard ancient. Obviously, if it's a Blade Guard ancient, then that becomes more obvious how you're supposed to work this. But if it's a regular ancient, you're going to have to put it in a position where it's going to then know that it's going to then obviously get into a charge situation. And there's a certain level of like gambling involved with it, because obviously you need to maintain that 6-inch aura to get the +1 attack. If your ancient isn't in a position where he's going to get in,
yeah, you could use the Warlord trait to up the range of the aura ability, can't you, by 3 inches? So that might help where your ancient's not in combat.
Yeah, mate, it's a lot though, right? And it becomes one of those situations that if +1 attack is what you're after, I feel like, Blood Angels is a better way to go, because it's just so many abilities just baked into Blood Angels to giving you +1 attack. So it's a once per battle. I suppose where it becomes really terrifying is if you manage to charge in with 3 units of assault, 3 10-man units of assault intercessors charge simultaneously, and this guy goes, way, then yeah, sure, you're going to make a mess of things when that happens, especially when you're automatically wounding against infantry and biker units on 6s. All of a sudden, a unit of Primaris assault intercessors is 4 attacks each, goes up to 5 attacks each. If by some miracle you got 20 of them in using this ability, well, all of a sudden that's 102 attacks that you're going to be doing because of the +1 for the sergeant. So 102 dice rolls, any 6s auto wounding. Let's say you're in the combat doctrine as well for giggles. So you're going to be -2. Sure, yeah, fine. In that very specific scenario, if you've managed to play it perfectly, it will be devastating. But the likelihood of you getting more than 2 units in is low. The likelihood of you getting 2 units in is low. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I mean, Silver Templars.
What's good about it is it, even though it only lasts for 1 turn, it does last for your turn and your opponent's turn. So obviously, if you haven't killed that unit, you get to attack first, so you have a better chance of finishing them off in that phase. But yeah, the fact that it's only once per game is a bit like, ooh, yeah.
I mean, Death Watch have a 1 CP stratagem. Admittedly, I think it only applies if you're fighting Xenos, but it's a 1 CP stratagem that just gives you +1 attack. In fact, I think it just works on anything, but I could be wrong. But anyway, the point is that, there's stuff in the game outside of this that does it better. I mean, it's fine, but I wish it gave you something else on top. It's one of those things where it's like, this isn't that impressive. Yeah, all right, fair enough. Warlord traits, I guess.
Yeah, so the first one is Accomplished Duelist. At the start of a fight phase, if this model is within engagement range of any enemy units, it can fight first that phase. And then the second thing is, each time this Warlord makes a melee attack, if it made a charge move, was charged or performed a heroic intervention, you can reroll the wound roll.
Yeah, no, that's pretty reasonable. To always fight first is strong. Re-rolling the wound rolls is strong. Giving characters re-rolls is a big deal at the moment. Yeah, I mean, again, the sort of model that I sort of immediately lean towards potentially having sort of benefits from this is, again, some firstborn stuff like a company champion or something of that ilk, but you're not going to get that, obviously. So again,
God, yeah, I was going to say that. They really need to do a Primaris version of company champion. That's what I want.
They kind of have them in Ultramarines with the Victrix Honor Guard, but it's a different sort of role. They're more of a, they're more, Victrix Honor Guard, right? Rather than a kind of duelist champion. I do really hope that we'll see something happen with the Black Templars and they give us a new Emperor's Champion in Primaris form, and that, creates the catalyst for a unit like that coming into existence. It's almost like, what's the name of the Space Marine that makes you go last and has an hourglass? Judah?
Yeah, Judicaire.
Judicia,
that's it. I can never get it right. Judicia,
yeah. I always want to say Judicari, but I'm like, no, not the monkey thing. Anyway, the point is like, something like that sort of, because it's weird. In the Chaos Space Marine release, they had the Executioner guy, and it almost sort of felt like a model like that. Though obviously in the Chaos Space Marine range, very brutal, very Chaos Space Marine. Something like that would have been cool to have seen incorporated into Primaris. Some sort of duelist would be good. But as it is, fine. Put it on a captain. It's all right. I can't really. It's all right. Re-rolling to wound is all right.
Well, what's interesting?
It's good.
What's interesting is sort of a fight first. So it's like the fight first mechanic seemed really good when it first came out, but it feels like they've tweaked it now to make things be fight last because that actually works better. So if he gets charged, he gets to fight first, but so does your opponent. And as it's your opponent's turn, they still get to activate first. I get the impression that is generally what's wrong with the fight first mechanic, because actually you either have a very fight first option and that's kind of it. Everything's at that fight first level. And then you could have fight last, which is what the Judicia, I believe, does. And then you have some other things, which is you can't be selected until everything else has fought, which maybe is the Judicia. I can't remember now. But that's like the most powerful one at all, because it's like you really are fighting last out of absolutely everything. This reminded me, like, the thing this sort of really highlights is it's basically bringing back initiative via stealth, and it's like you might as well just own it and bring back the initiative sort of, not mechanic but stat, and then have things that make things fight last initiative 1, things that charge or initiative 10, for example, or maybe some degrees of that. So if you're a higher initiative, you get like +2 or +3. So there's ways of working around it.
The problem with the initiative system in relation to the combat mechanics that they've created is that things with the same initiative create the simultaneous combat, which is something they've tried to avoid because, for whatever reason, I guess they're of the opinion that people can't comprehend the idea of things happening simultaneously anymore. It has to be, I go, you go kind of situation. Mm-hmm. Although I would love simultaneous again. Simultaneous would fix a lot of problems with the way the game is at the minute, but it does. I suppose one of the problems with simultaneous was always the idea of, right, well, you still have to resolve one of those combats first, and then you ended up in this really ugly situation. And it was where, right, okay, cool, well, you've done that, now I'm going to do it in response, and then you've then got to resolve. You almost then resolve each other's casualties, so you have to obviously mentally log how many of your guys are dead, then resolve yours, and then remove appropriately. And, that I often appreciate and understand how Games Workshop have come to a consensus that, results need to be resolved immediately. We're not going to enter into a situation where essentially a token scenario occurs where things are already having been resolved as being removed, but still have an action, even though noting that there are obviously things that activate even after they die. So that statement is ultimately incorrect as well, I suppose. My point is, Phil, I totally agree with you. They should bring back initiative, because the biggest problem with these kind of rules is understanding how they all interact with each other, and there's no kind of system or numeral system that allows me to visualize what I'm looking at. It's literally just a series of words, and the problem is with the words is they're open to interpretation, whereas at least with the initiative value, I know that 10 is a bigger number than 9, therefore I know what goes first because 10 is bigger than 9. Easy. But whereas it's like, oh, I have an ability that makes you go last. Oh, cool. Well, I have an ability that makes me go first. What do we do? I don't know. It becomes very weird. So yeah,
Certainly.
God bless them.
But overall, that one's a bit average as a Warlord trait.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's probably it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. The next one is Precision Commander. In your command phase, you can select one friendly Silver Templars Primaris core unit within 6 inches of this Warlord. You'll notice that a lot of these seem to affect Primaris people. Within 6 inches of the Warlord until the start of your next command phase, each time that unit is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll.
So that's intriguing, though, right? Because are they saying that is 1 hit roll in addition to the 1 hit roll that you might get through the chapter tactic, or is that the 1 hit roll and you get no more, but now you also get to re-roll the wound roll? It sounds to me like you still only get to re-roll 1 hit roll.
Well, no, because you get to so your bond marshal gives you 1 hit roll, right? This gives you an extra re-roll to hit and re-roll to wound.
Well, no, because if you read it, until the start of your next command phase, each time that unit is selected to shoot or fight, you can re-roll 1 hit roll and you can re-roll 1 wound roll. Whereas if you read the Bonds of Marshall, each time a unit with this tactic is selected to shoot or fight, you can re-roll 1 hit roll when resolving the unit's attacks. It sounds to me like it's a rules change to the extent that it's essentially adding the wound.
I would say if that was the case, it would just say you can re-roll 1 wound roll in your shoot or fight. Like that would make so much more sense. To me, this is an extra hit roll or wound roll. It's basically doing a bit of a captain aura, like sort of super aura that you get to select on 1 unit. So
yeah, I hear that. I don't know how that is interpreted, because normally Games Workshop try in their ever-growing attempts to be precise by sort of spelling it out, and then in doing so create these situations where you could interpret it one way or the other. Again, I don't know what the precedent is here, so whatever. I'll go with your assertion there, Phil, that you're re-rolling 2 hit rolls and re-rolling 1 wound roll. But
yeah. I mean, they could. I guess you could say they could have been a bit more explicit in terms of you get to roll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll in addition to the bond marshal roll.
Yeah, but it's all right. I mean, again, it's not bad when you consider that a chapter master upgrade is 40 points to just get re-rolling all your hit rolls. This as a warlord trait that costs no amount of extra points to re-roll 2 dice and re-roll 1 wound dice. It's potentially pretty reasonable depending on what it is that's doing the shooting.
Yeah. Eradicators spring to mind, like something where it's like low number of shots, really high damage, and the wound rolls are really important.
Yeah, that's true. And Eradicators are ballistic skill 2+ now, right? So the fact that not Eradicators, I'm talking about Eliminators. Yes, Eradicators. Yes, they're ballistic skill 3+. Sorry, so many similar sounding things. Anyway, last of the warlord traits.
Yeah, the spiritual synergy. Select 1 weapon this warlord is equipped with, excluding relics. Each time this warlord makes an attack, with that weapon, an unmodified wound roll of a 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to any other damage.
How do you suppose that interacts with their army-wide tactic?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Well, because it's an unmodified wound roll of a 6, and if you roll a 6 to hit, you automatically wound the target. They're ergo skipping the wound step. So actually, even though it's a spiritual synergy, it does not synergize with their army-wide ability.
But wasn't there a consensus that the dice roll that you used to hit is then the roll that resolves for the wound? I.e., if I used a 6 to hit, which then becomes an auto wound, it's the 6 that carries over. Wasn't there some ruling on that, or is that an 8th edition old thing that
I didn't think that was ever a thing. I always thought it was if you automatically wound, you don't ever roll for that wound, so it can never be that like 6 to wound like buff or exploding event that you might otherwise get, so it kind of bypasses that. I thought that was the general ruling on it.
Yeah, it sounds totally logical that it would be that.
I suspect it's somewhere under the rare rules section of the book.
Quite probably. Or it's just one of those things that, people have differing ideas on and no one's actually ever reached a general consensus about. But regardless of that, because of the fact that it clearly doesn't synergize the way you want it to with your chapter tactic, I mean, again, good in theory, bad in practice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it does synergize with the Banner of Echoes where you get +1 attack because.
Oh yes, there we go.
Because because that only affects Primaris Core, and as a warlord, you're probably not core because you're a character. So spiritual synergy synergizes with nothing. Well done.
Well done. There we go. Well, are you sure? Whoever did come up with the Silver Templars is probably not the most popular person in the office, clearly, because they don't want to give this guy anything, do they?
In their defense, and we didn't say this at the very beginning, this was and maybe you would have guessed it when I read out that number of 456, but this is the very first of the 9th edition Index Astartes rules, which is why they're a bit okay.
I don't know. Wow, it's. I'd be intrigued to know if it's the fact that they came first that made them a bit, underwhelming, or whether it's just one of those things. But anyway, we've got stratagem still, so maybe
I was just going to chip in with one thing as well. I'd be interested to see, because I believe in the Conquest magazines, with that extra supplement that they did, it was like a hardback one that you could buy extra. They did have their own chapter tactics and rules in there, and I imagine it would have been just like a chapter tactic ability and nothing else. But I'd have been interested to see what that was, and if any of that is a bit of a copy paste, a bit like the Fallen. Not that it was a copy and paste, but they transplant it across and just updated, or if this is a completely fresh set of rules for them. But who knows?
I mean, they love to copy and paste old things. It's the way it goes. Like the Fallen. That was a lovely copy paste.
It wasn't a copy and paste. It was a reworded, but essentially the same. Yes.
Different, but yet the same.
Different, but yet the same. Yes. So stratagems. We have the Swordman's Strike. Ka-chop!
Yes.
Ka-chop!
Well, with that, explanation of the ability and the fact that it can cost up to 2 CP, I am so excited to see what this is going to give us. 1 CP or 2 CP, depending on whatever the stipulation is that is made below. The Swordsman's Strike. Come on, Phil. This has got to be the saving grace of this army. This is why everyone needs to go out and, paint their armies Silver Templars.
Exactly. They do have probably the best chapter symbol around. It's like...
Oh, okay.
It's an upside-down sword. Or was it the right way around sword? Right way around sword, surrounded by 2 lightning bolts going downwards. The lightning bolts are upside down. That's it.
Is that what's happening?
I actually think it's really cool. I think you could actually just use that as a general, campaign badge or something.
Unless someone makes you have to run them as Silver Templars. Although, again, this stratagem could be good. So let's
have a look. So use a stratagem in your shooting phase when a Silver Templar Primaris Core unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight. When that unit from your army is selected to fight until the end phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack against a character unit, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. If a unit contains 5 or fewer models, this stratagem costs 1 CP. Otherwise, it costs 2. It's a bit weird. It says when a unit from your army is selected to shoot or in the fight phase, Oh, right. When a unit from the army selected to fight, they always really word these things. If you're selected to shoot or fight effectively, I don't know why I need to repeat themselves. Until the end of that phase, you get +1 to your hit roll. Which doesn't. Hold on. No, that doesn't synergize with your army-wide ability because that's only on unmodified hit rolls of 6s. You automatically wound your target. I mean, but +1 to hit is still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? You can take a Blade Guard Ancient and he just gives you that as standard, right? So if you're going heavy Blade Guard, you don't need to worry about.
But that's only 4 Blade Guard units, though, right? That it buff.
Yeah, but I'm assuming based on a lot of the stuff that. Well, at the moment, right? If you're going to go Primaris combat heavy and all of the abilities benefit wounding in combat and all that stuff, I feel like the Blade Guard are a pretty strong option. Whether they are or they aren't, I don't think +1 to hit. I mean, here's the thing. +1 to hit with shooting attacks could be quite interesting, depending on what guns you've got and what volumes they're going to be shooting.
Eradicators. This whole army is secretly an Eradicator army because you've got your Precision Commander reroll hit wound rolls on your Eradicator squad. You got Swordman's Strike, which is clearly about close combat, but you can use it in shooting. So you give that to the Eradicators. It still only costs you 1 CP because your Eradicator squad will be under 5. Or contain 5 or fewer. So that's how you build that. So it only costs you 1 CP, not 2 CP. So you get +1 to hit, reroll your hit rolls, or 1 hit roll, or 2 hit rolls, as we've worked out because of your special ability. And you get to reroll a wound roll. I
mean, it's certainly not bad, mate. I mean, yeah, it's all right. Can't keep, I understand. I appreciate where you've come from and what you've kind of created there in terms of what you're talking about.
The hot mess that I've created with my Eradicator rifle.
Well, exactly. It's a little bit against the grain of what they were sort of probably angling for. But
it's meant to be close combat orientated, obviously.
But even then, I do understand what you're saying. I suppose that's the thing, though, right? Again, if you're in a situation. You got yourself that banner. You're giving yourself the +1 attack. At that point, yeah, sure, okay, +1 to hit's pretty cool because you're going to be hitting on 2s. Yeah, all right, sure. I mean, that's the thing. If all of a sudden you got a unit of assault intercessors doing 51 attacks, hitting on 2s, any 6s are auto wounding. I don't know, maybe there's a captain nearby, so you're re-rolling ones natively. Sure, fine. It's all right. Yeah, fine. I don't know if I'd spend 2 CP on that, but it's all right. I don't know. I mean, Phil, am I going crazy? I mean, it's just not exciting necessarily. It's just a bit. When you read Swordsman's Strike, I thought it was going to be like you auto wound on 5s rather than 6s. That's what I thought.
Oh, okay. Be. Yeah, that would be good. That would
exactly right, and it plays with what they are. I was like, oh, that'd be clever because then, for 2 CP, I can be auto wounding on 5. Sure, I'll take that for 2 CP on a 10-man unit, but that's one to hit.
I think it's that thing of especially if you're like shooting through dense cover. Again, this isn't to the theme. I'm just thinking about shooting stuff because when you get a -1 to hit, which is predominantly through shooting, the ability to negate that I think is really huge. So that's really good. There's very few instances in combat, unless it's against specific characters with an ability where you're -1 to hit in combat. But again, the ability to negate that is pretty good. And just getting a general...
Oh, God, and that's the other thing, isn't it? You have to specifically be going against a character. I completely forgot about this.
Oh, God, yeah, it's rubbish. Yeah.
It's absolute rubbish. Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry that I forgot it said character. It is terrible. All right, cool. Moving on. Unless, of course, the character you're attacking.
So it doesn't have to be an infantry mod. Like to synergize with their army-wide bonus, it's got to be an infantry or biker character.
Yeah.
That's okay. The idea, though, that it could be any character. This could be a knight. It could be Mortarian. It doesn't have to be infantry only. So it could be monsters or vehicles potentially. So if you get +1 to your hit roll, is pretty good. Again, though, I think it's +1 to hit. I think that's okay.
Yeah, what, against characters specifically?
Well, if it's a big thing like a Mortarian, it's like, I'll take that. But on my Eradicators, obviously. But
your Eradicators, obviously. Yeah,
the Templars, the Eradicator chapter. I
don't know, mate. I just think it's a bit rubbish. I think,
it sort of feels like it's okay. On a, you got a. Oh no, I was going to say you got a captain. No, you can get. Wait, can you? Can you get a Primaris Thunderhammer captain?
No,
I think you can, but isn't he for salamanders only?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so you can get Agrax Agatone.
Yeah, okay,
but he's not a generic captain.
Okay, I mean you could. Okay, so you've got your standard assault. You've got your standard assault intercessor squad. Your sergeant has a thunderhammer, therefore you're at -1 to hit. That squad is going up against, let's say, Mortarian, who's a character. So therefore you can use a stratagem, negate that -1. Bob's your uncle. Makes,
you know, the other thing that really irks me about this army as well, they didn't include cavalry in the things that you can auto flipping wound on 6s. It's like,
in terms of infantry, biker, or cavalry.
They do cavalry
that quite a lot though sometimes.
But you think cavalry would be in the mix, right? So it's like all of a sudden
you could say swarms as well. I mean, they've got so many.
And swarms, yeah, absolutely. It should be swarms as well.
Well,
it's like, look, there's Canis Wolfborn and his flipping Thunderwolves.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, maybe it should just be non-vehicle, non-monsters, non-super heavy or something. Or maybe it's because they're animal lovers and they don't want you hitting those poor horses. Or
no, that's true.
Yeah.
Or wolves or Slanesh seekers or whatever it is. Great. All right. Well, anyway, claim ruins or something. Yeah. I was going to say clam ruins.
I know claim ruins is a bit weirdly worded as a sentence, but
well, it's not nearly as weirdly worded as what I've just read. They've replaced the name of deployed scramblers with. What an absolute mess that is! But that's a topic for another day. Anyway, right, clam ruins. What's going on with them?
This is 1 CP. This is the last stratagem, everyone.
It's got to be good, man. This is the redemption.
Use a stratagem in the fight phase when a Silver Templars Primaris unit from your army is selected to fight. If, when it was selected to fight, that unit was within engagement range of an enemy unit containing more models than itself, then until the end of the phase, each time a model in the Silver Templars unit makes an attack, add 1 to the strength characteristic of that attack, and improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1.
So, right.
So if you're in combat, if you're in engagement range, you've got to be in engagement range already, and they've got to have more models than you do in your squad. Then you get +1 strength and -1 AP.
How can this stratagem... Oh, God, this book... Well, not this book, this supplement. How can this stratagem exist alongside the Swordsman's Strike, right? And be that much better and cheaper? How do they do this? How do they write the two of these down and land at these numbers?
Well, but the reason why is you can't really have a 2 CP version of this that's like for a 10-man unit, because you need more. I mean, you could do, because you go up against orc boys that have got like 20-man squad, but ultimately it's encouraging you to have like a 3 to 5-man squad. So no matter what you're up against, they're always predominantly going to have more models. So I think that's why it's only 1 CP. But you're right, it is so much better.
So I'll take a 3-man unit of Blade Guard, such is the way they go, or a 5-man unit of Blade Guard, and I'll run into a unit of Guardsmen, Sisters of Battle, Elder Guardians, Tau Fire Warriors, although they only come in 5s actually, or well, some people, you can take them in 10s, but most people take them in 5s, so let's scratch that. Kroot.
You're basically going to say the +1 strength doesn't do anything because you wound on 2s already, and the -1 AP
no.
doesn't do anything because you...
The +1 wound does a lot because the +1 strength does a lot because you go to strength 6. Because the relic sword's +1. It's not, or is it +2 for a relic?
I thought it was +2, unless it's
Lordy,
-2
hang on.
AP. Hold on, let's. Oh, actually, I've got it up already. Hold on, perfect.
Well, that's good for you at your age.
Oh,
mate.
yeah, no, you're right. It's +1 strength, -3 AP, 2 damage.
There you go. So the fact that you're going to then go to strength 6 is pretty massive because you're going to be winning on 2s. And if you're against sisters, okay, they probably still have a 6-sub invuln because sisters, but assuming they're still going to have that when the new book comes along. But yeah, okay, cool. I can run into a sister squad if they get rid of that 6-sub invuln. Yeah, it's just, shred through them because they're going to come in 10, 10-person units and you're just going to obliterate them. That is all right for 1 CP. That's fine. That's an absolutely acceptable stratagem. I'm not saying it's the best thing I've ever read ever, but amongst this sea of mediocrity, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, like the armor of Zenaris for like your warlord, and then you combo that with the accomplished duelist, so you make your warlord a good close combat unit, is very thematic. But that's like ultimately, it doesn't seem that great an investment.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, if you like the Silver Templar color scheme, if you like the lore that they've created around them,
and their cool logo,
totally go for it, right? I mean, ultimately, you can be a low tier player, and you'll have the bragging rights of winning with an underwhelming Space Marine chapter, noting that they're still Space Marines, right? So they're still going to be good in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, just nothing to get excited about. I am not surprised we missed them, Phil. It didn't seem like much to get excited about.
Yeah, I think it's okay. If we were to rank them, is this the worst one?
Well, no, they're better than the Fallen.
Okay, let's rank Index Astartes only. So forget about the Fallen.
Well, now you're going to make me need to remember what order I ranked the last lot in, but I believe I went with Exorcists as number 1, I think.
Or, yeah, maybe second, and you did Emperor
I think I did
first.
Oh, maybe I did. Yeah, I think maybe I did do Emperor. This is one of those instances where, we sound so disingenuous because I can't remember what I said last week. But I remember feeling like Exorcists had a option should the game go Grey Knights and Thousand Suns heading. Yeah. But and they had some very good relics. Very good relics. That armor that reduces invulns was very good, as was obviously that bolt pistol that they had that was the Exorcists had some good things. Nothing that good necessarily stood out to me for the spears, although I feel like their ability to add 1 to the charges and the adding extra hits on the 6 is actually quite a strong thing. But the point is I do feel like these guys are going to be, well, we can't really compare them to Keepers of the Tome, right? Because Keepers of the Tome, or Tome Keepers, or whatever they were called, were not really an index like these last 3 were, right? Like the Tome Keepers were, or Keepers of the Tome were...
Well, they're mostly characters.
Yeah.
I mean, they did have an army-wide ability as well, didn't they? I'm sure they did.
No, they used generic...
Ultramarines,
secondary... well, no, they had the generic secondaries from the Codex. They didn't have a specific one.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that of the 3, the Emperor Spears, the Exorcists, and the Silver Templars are the worst of the 3.
Yeah, I would agree. Reading through it, they just seem a bit like, okay, like a bit underwhelming. Whereas the Emperor Spears, they were like, no, they're okay, not great. And the Exorcist was like, oh, daddy, oh yes, these are good, but within the right circumstances. So they weren't just like, oh, these are clearly broken, everyone's going to take them because they're only really good against demons, but then they're like so good against them. They're niche, but they seem much more thematic, and the abilities and relics all sort of synergize a bit better, unlike the Silver Templars, which have some good things, but they don't really tie together very well. Like some abilities contradict each other or just don't work with their army-wide ability. So they're kind of negating that bonus, which to me, I always don't like when that happens. You sort of want something to give that a bonus and work well with it.
Yeah, totally. If you're only going to give something one chapter tactic, a couple stratagems, a couple relics, and a few warlord traits, you should have some interesting synergies between that make it intriguing. If you aren't going to do that, then yeah, because that's the thing. You should approach it with a theme, and the theme was from the outset is these guys run in and smash up infantry and bikes. Fine, all right, cool. Give me a bunch of stuff that further enhances my ability to do that. If it is that they are supposed to be an anti-horde army, give me stuff that makes them anti-horde army, like, weapons that, I can negate all of my attacks in favor of attacking everything that is in base contact with me, rules like that, like where you can essentially potentially end up in a situation where you're in base contact with 8 miniatures, therefore you get 8 attacks that auto hit, dare I say, the idea of like a whirlwind of gore or something like Gabriel Seth used to have. Stuff like that would have been interesting, but yeah, where we landed was, yeah. Oh, well, there we go. Silver Templars. I'm glad we did it though, Phil. I'm glad that the people pointed out our failures and that we went back and rectified it. So there we go. That's the complete set.
We've added it to our collection, yeah, and we've got it done and dusted until the next White Dwarf comes out and makes us do it all over again.
Well, I feel like if they do more of these over time, we probably just need to let them amass again.
Oh yeah, that was good fun. I sort of want to see more Index Xenos and or Index Guard or something, like not just Marines. More Chaos Marines, I think, would be good. Yeah.
I would love to see them do more expanding into the Xenos and just all of it. I think it'd be great. Yeah, and again, whether it's good or bad, it's just interesting, right? Again, you're not going to, be playing the most optimal version of Marines if you're running Silver Templars as per their appearance in White Dwarf. But they're interesting, right? The different rules, they've got some options that, maybe not everyone will be expecting. So you never know, right? I mean,
also, you don't need to be playing the most optimized thing. If you're just playing some fun games with your mates and no one's being a tryhard, no one's being a Dan, for example, you can easily just run this army and just have fun with it, and own their slightly mediocre rules, and it'll be fine.
I like, I like these, these barbed comments I'm getting today. It's all. Such emotions.
That's what you wheel me out.
Exactly.
That box for.
That's it. You're being very, very mean, very mean. But anyway, on that note, we're going to move on now to whatever it is that we decide will come next. Transitional noise. Woo! Hello again, all. In this part of the podcast, we're going to, talk about the upcoming competitive events that the good people of Games Workshop are now hosting across America, and potentially the implications that this could mean for the competitive scene in the general sense, noting that neither myself nor Phil have ever gone to a competitive event in the north of America, but I understand that those from Northern America and, other territories enjoy a good old game of competitive 40k, myself included, and occasionally Phil, right, Phil?
On occasion.
On occasion. You dabble with the old competitive play.
I do.
But irrespective of, your competitive status, it is fair to say that you would assert that the Americans like competitive 40k, right, Phil?
I think they like it more than anyone else. Really?
More than anyone else. I mean, there are some very competitive players within the British Isles, but...
within the Britons, yes.
Within the Britons, but it's reasonable to assert that, the increase in competitive play has been driven by the appetite of the Americans, at least objectively speaking, I feel.
Yeah, and I think this is the sort of, not necessarily the first, but this is the big sort of payoff, I guess, from Games Workshop hiring Mike Brandt, wasn't it, who himself ran a Warhammer events in the Americas. So yeah, which one was it before? Adepticon, wasn't it? So that's what he used to run. Then he got hired to run effectively the tournament stuff for Games Workshop, and I guess this is a kind of collaboration that has that's seen fruit in these tournaments that they're now rolling out for 2021.
Well, exactly. I mean, what's really interesting about this is that they're essentially hosting their own events in the style of obviously what has been established with things like Nova, the Las Vegas Open. Other events are available as well. But the point is that, this is a really interesting kind of touring schedule that they are entering into to essentially take over convention halls and, hotel, just general kind of convention areas, and hosting these rather large scale events that they are saying will feature no less than 256 players per location.
Well, that's also per game system as well. So
correct,
the
yes.
events are not just Warhammer 40k, but Age of Sigmar. So yeah.
Well, no, the Age of Sigmar events, only feature 128 players.
Right, yeah. So you've combined them, yeah. So it's gonna have both.
Yeah, so 256 players for 40k, 128 players for Age of Sigmar.
Oh, so
what is that? 384 all in.
It's a lot.
That is a lot of people gathering together. Once again,
if you see the pictures, and this is one thing that America has over the UK, is that they just have massive venues that can actually cater for these kind of people, and that's going to be like in a kind of COVID safe environment where everyone's like nicely spaced out. If you think about Warhammer World, it can fit in maybe 200 people, and that's like literally squashed side by side, back to back sort of thing. It's like you don't have really the capacity for these kind of events, and that's doubles events. So normally you'd get 100 people if you're doing a sort of single player tournament.
I think they capped it back in 2019 at 120 spots or something, which was quite ambitious. But, especially when you consider that they actually reduced the footprint of the Warhammer World gaming hall with the introduction of the Forge World and Black Library stores. The way they redesigned it, they actually reduced the size of the hall, but then they actually then increased the amount of people that they wanted in there. And what's extra fun is while they cram people in there, they still let just, general punters come in and walk around. So while you're playing your games, you occasionally at Warhammer World had like little kids running around going like, oh, what's going on? Which is fine, ultimately. Obviously, it's great that they're enjoying the hobby and so on and so forth. But it is one of those things. I mean, there are or have been a handful of occasions where I found myself in a weird conversation with like a bystander, and I've had to be like, thanks, pal, but like I really need to get on with this now. Sorry. And, you feel kind of awful about that, but it's just one of the weird side effects of Warhammer World.
It's such a mean person, but...
Well, it's
but no, that is fair enough. And you're right, they do have a bunch of tables, normally the big sort of display board type games still available to hire out for the locals or people that are coming up to visit for the day, in addition to the Warhammer TV sort of end, which is also sort of ring fenced off. So they do like to cram in a lot of things that can happen while you're also there to play a tournament.
Absolutely. I mean, if ever there was a advert, though, for potentially picking up Age of Sigmar, the fact that you can be, rewarded with the same kind of accolades and, status as being a grand tournament champion, but only needing to play 6 games total is a pretty appealing thing, because as it stands with this strategy that they have laid out for Warhammer 40,000 Grand Tournament players, of those 256 players, we are all being asked when taking part in this event to play no less than 8 rounds, which is pretty intense. I mean, I've gone to tournaments where I've had to play 6 rounds, and those are pretty hard going. Playing 8 rounds of 40k over 3 days, I mean, that is a lot of 40k.
I know, it does feel like that's a bit more of a standard for 40k in America, though, because they do these such big events. You obviously need that many people to whittle it down to like have a winner. I think normally, like for example, LVO I think does 8, but the last day is specifically for the finalists. So if you haven't qualified into the, was it top 18 or top 20 maybe, then you don't make that cut, so you're sort of free to do other things on that day. And I assume with this that this is different, where everyone's expected to sort of play in those final rounds on the Sunday, but then you might just find there'll be a lot of dropouts because people might not want to play. But on the flip side, if you're traveling, because there's only 3 of these events around the country at the moment, if you're traveling from another state, you're traveling there, you want to make the most of it. I would want to play every single game of 40k I can get, even if that last day is going to be absolutely exhausting. Because, you know, you spent the money, you're paying for a hotel, you're paying to go to the event. So why not make the most of it?
Totally agree with you, mate. I mean, I'm always someone of the opinion of it doesn't really matter how poorly you're doing. You owe it to your opponents and to the event organizers to show up if you've made that commitment. Obviously, look, you're a paying customer as well, so you're absolutely within your rights not to turn up if you don't fancy it anymore. But I think it is important for the good of the community and the good of the scene, as it were, that you play your part. Fair enough, you might get pipped at the post and you might end up losing your 4th out of 4 games to qualify in that top bracket, noting that there is a whole bracketing system that comes into effect. So essentially, 256 players is a very specific number because 256 effectively after 4 games leaves you with 16 people that should have won all of their games, which then makes it appropriate because you're then broken up into 16 player brackets, whereby the theory being is that all 15 of your opponents in that 16-player bracket will, like you in this example, have won all 4 of their previous games. So you should end up in a situation where going into Game 5, you are now only playing against those which have won all 4 of their previous games. And then from there on in, the other brackets will be determined based on those who have, say, drawn 1 game, won 3 games, or lost 1 game, won 3 games, and then from there on in, the system unfolds. But in terms of, obviously people planning for greatness who are going for the top spot, you want to obviously make sure that you perform in those first 4 games, because ultimately it doesn't necessarily matter whether you do poorly in game 5 or not, because you are then obviously up against the 16 or 15 other best players at the event. And ultimately, the worst thing that can happen to you at this point is you come 16th overall, which out of 256 players is no bad thing, right, Phil?
No, that's really good. Although it does seem odd. So you're effectively bracketed with 16 other people or 15 other people, and you're playing for that spot. So it might be the top 16. It might be, 17 to, I don't know, what?
32.
32. So if you're in that second spot, let's say you've lost 1 game, but then you win your last 2 games, you could have objectively won more games overall than someone who got into the top 16 category, but then lost their 2 games. So you've done better, but overall you're actually ranked worse just because of the fact that you won your 2 games at the end rather than at the beginning of the event, which seems odd, and I could see some people finding it a bit weird. But I also sort of understand their system. It's like you get to this point, there's like a cutoff, and then you're sort of fighting for your place within that range that you've kind of qualified for.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing, right? At the end of the day, there's a barrier to entry. There are only going to be 16 people who've won all their games going into round 4. That's just the maths, right? And the situation is that you need to have qualified for that. And at that point, it's not really important whether or not your placing would be impacted by various outcomes. I mean, sure, maybe within the remit where, you know, things are a little bit more expansive, they need to start taking into consideration wins and losses and calculate positions based on those variables. But certainly when it comes to the most important aspect of the tournament, i.e. the top players, the top 16 players in this instance, then I think it is important that you break those guys away into their own, you know, mini tournament, as it were, to determine the best overall player. Because ultimately, there's just the nature of the beast. I mean, there's no perfect system with this stuff, right? I mean,
well, it is normally what. So that, as I said before, that's what the LVO do. Like the top 16 or whatever it is, do play on to the final, but then no one else carries on playing. Whereas here, it sounds like even if you've not qualified into that top 16, you still play 2 extra games regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might be like, oh well, I won, you know, all these games more than someone else who placed top 10. Technically, you're just as good as them, but you place not as good.
Yeah, and I can acknowledge that point, although I don't think it's really valid because of the fact that it's the caliber of your opponents at that point, right? I mean, ultimately, for better or worse, the people who got to the place where they had won 3 games going into game 4 should be the best players at the event, right? It's just logical. Having won 3 in a row at an event like this means you are one of the best players easily. The fact then that you lose in the 4th game means that, you know, whether it's fair or whether it's correct is, you know, not really for us to debate. But the point is that is how we measure the success and how we gauge the superior player. And at that point, you have 16 of the best players, and losing to them is obviously less damaging. And also, here's the other thing, right, as well, and what I like about this system and why I think it's good, is you're dealing in wins and losses here, right? It's a system that gets you to a place where all that matters is wins and losses. Why I like this, why I feel like it is actually theoretically better than some of the older ITC systems is that you don't end up in weird matchup scenarios. Like, I've been to tournaments before where I've won all my games, but I've come like second place because a guy who didn't win as well as I did in games 1 and 2 is matched up against someone much easier than I had to play in the finals. And then what essentially happens is I have a really close game in the finals against the second, you know, best person there that I would have beaten in this example. But because my the guy who won it was actually in 3rd or 4th place going into round 3, they then slingshot me because their army and that matchup is such that they just, you know, steamroller the other person through, you know, random happenstance and, you know, or superior gameplay or whatever it is. And then you end up losing out because of the cumulative points and how all that worked with like ITC scores of old. Whereas now, it doesn't really matter if I win by 1 or if I win by 100. I won, therefore I progress. I lose, therefore I take the L. And that's what I like about that system is that they've devised a system that rewards wins and losses. So it doesn't matter how well you win or how badly you lose, you're all kind of in that same area, which I think is really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's not bad. And they also talk about like your ties and stuff. So they talk about that there's going to be 2 equal top awards. One's a player for the best overall record, where ties are actually broken down by the quality of their competitive performance. So I think that's like how well your opponents have done to basically be like how, in terms of, did you have easier opponents that lost all their games, or did you have really tough opponents that basically ranked really high? So I think that's quite an interesting but good measure for effectively what is the competitive trophy. And then they also have a player with the best combined paint and competitive scores. This is the one I would always be going for, which is a bit more of the all-round hobbyist auteur, should I say, award. And then they also talk about there's numerous other awards presented for categories such as army painting, bracket wins, which is quite good. So, you know, for people that aren't in that top 16 bracket, you've still got someone to play for, and then runner-up finishes, they say, but who knows what that would actually mean.
Yeah. No, I like how they've broken it down. It's also important that they obviously clarify that safety is incredibly important, and they selected these venues specifically to enable social distancing, which is very encouraging and speaks to what Phil said before. They're not going to be ramming these venues filled with people. It's actually, a much more appropriate way of approaching it, which is quite cool. And also, you're going to be able to accrue your ITC points, which is obviously very important for the competitive scene. And one of the reasons why Warhammer World historically has not been an event or an event structure that the competitive scene has been interested in, because they don't get their precious ITC points. So could we, Phil, potentially be seeing ITC points given at Warhammer World fairly soon?
Well, I mean, I almost would like it if they didn't, because in a way, I don't know. In a way, keeping away some of the tryhards is potentially a good thing. Not to say that they all are, or I like to go to an event as much as the next person. What's interesting here is they say it will award points where appropriate for US-based ranking systems like the ITC format. But interestingly, the ITC format is actually an international circuit, so it implies it's saying, we use whatever regional system there are. But in the UK, we also use ITC. So would we just be using ITC for Warhammer World events?
Unless they're foreshadowing their own system at some point.
Maybe, I don't know. In a way, I think it's a barrier to entry for some people, like new players, young players that want to have more of a sort of fun experience at Warhammer World.
Yeah.
But then you do have a different tiering of events. So you've got Throne of Skulls, which was the competitive event, but is now the more friendly. It's a fun tournament. It's not necessarily even a tournament. They sometimes just call it events, which is a weird way of saying it's a tournament, but we don't want to call it a tournament. But then you do have the grand tournaments sort of circuit in the UK. So maybe that one will be ITC based. But I don't know, because it's like ITC is big over here, but it's nowhere near as popular as it is in America. So would they go, is this a benefit or a hindrance to regular Warhammer World players? I imagine only a small amount of people that go to a GT at Warhammer World are actually ITC tournament players. It's probably like 10 or 20 people. No, maybe like 20, 25 people out of 100, I would say, are probably ITC players. I mean, that's just me completely guessing. But I think there's less players than more. And it's like that barrier to entry of, oh yeah, by the way, you want to come to our event, you've now got to sign up on an app. And you've got to register your details there. Some people might be like, okay, but I don't really want to.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think what will probably happen with this is that they will offer it as an option, but it's not a prerequisite that you have to do it, right? So they're going to take care of I would hope anyway, they would take care of all of the logistics and all of the ITC scoring, should you want to register for that. I'm sure Best Coast would effectively integrate with these events in a way so as essentially you just opt in, but it's not essential, right? And I think that's great because it just gives people the option. Also, to defend... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, would that be a bit confusing? Like for ITC, it's like, we've got this person that won an ITC event, but they're not actually on the ITC, so we can't talk about their list because it's not registered on our app. That would be awkward in that respect, I think.
I think in that context, though, it just becomes a situation that they've opted in or they haven't, right? And I think, ultimately, they won an event that offers ITC points, but it's not relevant whether they are or aren't, right? If they're just going as a one-off and they don't care, then that's fine, right? But if you're ultimately there and you're earning those points, then you get them. I get it, right, in terms of list analysis and all this other stuff, but I would broadly assume that they would be live streaming this, that they would be broadcasting in some way. Whoever wins this thing is going to be broadcast, and you're going to see that list, right? Whether they're an ITC player or not. And it would be amusing to me if someone who has absolutely no ITC identity turned up to one of these things and beat everyone. Wouldn't that be fun? Like, literally, this person from out of nowhere, never done an ITC event in their life, has now won it. I doubt that's going to happen, but you never know, right? I mean, again, all sorts of mad things can happen. And again, in defense of the try-hard kind of players and the Warhammer World scenario and getting those guys to come along, I think ultimately if things are done in the right way, in the right place, I think that's fine. Because I think one of the things that's always interesting about Warhammer World's Grand Tournament series is, in the eyes of the competitive scene, it's kind of almost looked at like a soft play area, like the idea that, you know, winning a Warhammer World GT isn't actually a meaningful accomplishment because it's not, you know, as big an event as some, you know, random, you know, local ITC event that takes place.
Anyone can win a GT heat, can't they, Dan?
Well, I mean, anyone can say they did. Whether you actually do it or not is TBD. There we go, sick burn. Anyway, sorry, moving along. The point is that the point is that I'm making is that I think it is good for Games Workshop to embrace that side of the competitive scene, because that way you can get a bit more legitimacy in those events. And in the defense of the try-hard players, Phil, as someone who goes to a lot of tournaments, I have the least amount of bother playing at those kind of events. In my experience, where tempers have been most flared up has been at Warhammer World with people who don't typically play competitively, right? That's where I've seen the most rage between people, at least when you start creeping towards the top, because there are a lot of people who get a lot more kind of frustrated by the whole situation. Whereas when I've played at most kind of like indie tournament things I've gone to, it tends to be a bit more chill. But then there is drama. There's drama everywhere, right? And it's part of the thing. Every now and again, someone's going to have a bit of a nerd rage, and that's fair enough. You know, I mean, you know, we've all fallen victim to it from time to time, in different ways, in different scenarios, in different circumstances. But the point is that, yeah, I don't know. I tend to find the competitive scene isn't that bad. I don't want to sort of.
No, I think you're right, and I'm you know, not being mean to them per se. I just like the Warhammer World. It's slightly more chilled out approach, because you know, I think you get a lot more casual gamers there, just going, oh, if I lose, it doesn't really matter, and I'm happy to play my games where I am, and as long as I have good games, that's cool. Whereas it feels like more the sort of regular ITC stuff, it's more, I want my points and I've got to do really well, and if I'm not going to get to the top table, I'm just not going to even bother to show up to my last few games, and I'm just going to leave, which I've seen before at the ITC events that I've gone to before. I mean, you still get that to an extent at Warhammer, but way less. Like on the last day, there's a couple of dropouts, or people, maybe it's because they partied too hard the night before or something, but you get more dropouts, I find, in the ITC events as the day goes along.
Yeah, which is understandable, right? I mean, when you go to the LVO and you've got high expectations and you lose game 2, you know that's it for you, right? And then you have to basically just be like, well, what do I want to do now? Do I want to go and enjoy Vegas, or do I want to turn up and start playing some games? Especially when you're a British tourist on holiday at the LVO, going with lofty expectations. If you lose game 2, you might just be like, well, you know, it's not every day that I'm in Vegas, right? I better go enjoy this, because, you know, I can play 40k any day of the week. Whereas, you know, this is something I don't get to do that often. So I do understand it, but who knows?
What will be interesting is, and obviously this is an interesting point because they rolled this out in America first of all, and it's like Games Workshop is predominantly a UK based operation. When they've done Warhammer events, predominantly being in the UK, the team does get like flown out to LVO and Adepticon, but it's a relatively small like events team, or you know, Warhammer TV, for example, or sometimes like the designers go out and stuff. It's like, it'd be interesting to see who's actually running these events. Is it the UK events team? Is it a full-time job that people are going to be out in America running these events all year round? Are they going to be using Games Workshop terrain? Are Games Workshop going to produce a bunch of mats that they're going to use? Are they going to team up with Frontline Gaming, who run the ITC, or at least, you know, organize it for like their terrain or their mats while they're out there? That's, you know, it'd be interesting to see what they do. I guess they're just going to be using the Grand Tournament pack, which is what they've said. But it'd be interesting to see what they do for like table layouts, because in a way that's setting a precedence that a lot of other ITC and other tournaments in general might want to follow, depending on how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's reasonable for us to assert that they would want to be using their own range of terrain. Um, I said this before to you, Phil. I don't know if we said it on the podcast or not, but it does seem logical to me that Games Workshop actually come up with a terrain solution or a kind of tournament in a box solution to give you an amount of terrain and a mat and all this other stuff to kind of standardize what they think competitive play needs to look like. Again, I appreciate that for players like Phil and to an extent me as well, right? Because despite the fact that I enjoy a competitive game, my favorite form of gaming is still the fun thematical stuff, right? I like a competitive edge to it. I like to win, but I don't necessarily enjoy the weird chess with dice thing that we've become with the competitive scene, right? Like when I look at the people who've been playing on like Tabletop Simulator, those kind of tournament structures with that kind of board layout really upsets me because I look at it and just think that's not 40k. That's something different. And to be completely clear, in the UK, at least in my experience, up until the LGT of 2018, no one was doing that kind of terrain. And then even then, because that 2018 LGT was such a joke and everyone thought it was just utterly awful, it didn't really become a thing until I feel like they did it again in 2019 and they've better established what it was supposed to be. But the greater majority of tournaments I've been to in the UK still mostly just had a bunch of themed tables. This one's the Admech table. This one's the random Aztec pyramid table. This one's the Tau table with all the, the wibbly Tau stuff on it. This one's the Elder one. All right. And it was all thematic and it all had different terrain layouts. It's only really been the modern phenomenon of TTS that has essentially galvanized this ideology that this is what our terrain needs to be and this is how a board lays out and this is how you play 40k 9th edition properly. And I'd be interested to see how that starts to translate in reality. So I'm going to a tournament this weekend. It's Saturday when this comes out. I'm going back to Poole. I'm going to a 40k Brawl event hosted by Adam. I'm interested to see what he does with terrain. Now, I'm pretty confident he's going to try and replicate the tabletop simulator style, big L shapes and things. But then I also know they're limited in what they have access to. They've done deals with foreground and all that stuff, but is it going to just be that, or is it going to be something in between? It was historically. Will it be this time? I'll let you know on the next episode. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I'm sort of terrified by what this sort of stuff means, because the more we standardize it and the more we turn competitive play into what I'm seeing on Tabletop Simulator, the less interested I am in it. The more boring I feel like it's becoming, because that's not 40k in my opinion. It's just chess with dice, right? It's a very different sort of thing. I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
Well, the sort of infamous L-shaped buildings, which I think have been around for a few years now, I think that predates Tabletop Simulator, because that's a relatively new COVID phenomenon. But I do think it's become ingrained in the tournament scene as this is the correct way to do terrain. And it really is weird, because it felt like that was a solution to 8th edition not really having good terrain rules. And now they're still embracing it, even though the terrain rules are now fixed in theory.
Yeah.
So, it seems odd. I don't know if they're doing it because they want to sort of weight things a little bit more towards combat-orientated units, or to make it not a shooting gallery, which I can understand you want to do. You want a good balance of both equally weighted combat and shooting to be viable in the game. But I don't think L-shaped ruins at block line of sight is the way to do it. I think it looks awful. It's not very thematic, especially when every single table has it on there. I mean, when it comes to tournaments, I'm not a huge fan of standardized table layouts being repeated across every single board, because yes, it means you're sort of on a kind of comparative with your other opponents, that you're all playing on the same terrain. But if you're doing that same terrain layout for 5 games or 6 games or 8 games, that's boring. And you could shuffle the terrain around between each game, I guess.
Well, they do now say, like, so most of the tournaments are saying like, oh, so game 1 is this mission and you play on this terrain, game 2 is this mission and you play on this terrain. So they change the layouts, so they have layouts for with the same terrain laid out differently for each board or for each style of game. But yeah, I don't know, it's that thing whether, I mean, TTS has definitely popularized it. It's been around for ages. My biggest problem with the way that the competitive scene has embraced these big line of sight blocking walls, and I've said this to death before, is the fact that these walls aren't walls, and that becomes absurd to me. It's like the ruins rules, as interpreted by the competitive scene, just has become this weird thing. It's like, again, it's the have your cake and eat it too scenario of, well, you know, I don't want you to shoot at me, but I also want to be able to miraculously phase shift through this physical barrier. And it's like, that is just stupid. Like, if you just want a game where there's nothing but walls, just put walls up and just say, there you go, there's a wall. You can't go through the wall. And then at least it kind of then creates a dynamic where if you want to hide behind a wall to not be shot, you're not then just getting a bunch of innate advantages because you can just teleport through the thing. You know, it's like, weigh up the pros and cons. Do you want to be shot at? No. Okay, fine then. But then your tactical options are becoming limited because now you're behind this wall. That to me becomes more nuanced and more, you know, more competitive because you're making tactical decisions. When you just have everything the way you want it 100% of the time, you're just weighting a deck. That's what it is.
If you look at it from the standard Games Workshop terrain, an L shape in the way where it completely blocks line of sight would actually be created via a stack of containers. But those stack of containers you can't pass through. You've got to climb over or go around. So there, as you say, there's innate disadvantages to having that kind of ability. They're not super thin, you can't just pass through them, which you can do with a ruin that completely blocks line of sight. I mean, there are some very rarely used bits of terrain, like there's in the Sector Imperialis range, there's a Mechanicum building where like 90% of the windows on the ground floor are all blocked out, but not all of them. So you can replicate that sort of style of building. But again, it's like this really obscure piece of terrain that only came out a few years ago and no one ever seems to own, even though it looks really cool. But yeah.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the fact that you just phase shift through a wall with no negatives to your movement characteristics as well. I'm not suggesting we need to go back to the days where you roll 2d6 and move up to the highest dice roll, but I am saying that if you're going to miraculously teleport through a wall, there should be some hindrance to your movement, even if it's just an inch, you know, just whatever, like just do something to make that. Again, I'm going off on the terrain rant again, which is not intentional. It's just where we ended up. But my point is that, yeah, I want to see what Games Workshop do from a terrain perspective, because that's going to be super interesting, right? Because if they turn up and they go, cool, here's our terrain, and they basically come out and say, and you use our terrain rules exactly as we tell you to, and this is the layout, and you don't have big L shapes, and you don't have what the competitive scene are used to, you know, are Games Workshop ready to annoy that community by not doing the status quo, or are they going to just fold and do it the way that they want it to be done because they just want to appease that community? That's the thing I'm interested in.
Yeah, I believe even at Warhammer World, one of the last times we could go, and I don't know if this was pre-8th edition, I think it was early 8th edition, they did sort of create, so they did follow the ITC format basically, where when it was lower ground floor, windows were blocked, and I think they did that because they acknowledged that they don't have a lot of terrain that doesn't have line of sight blocking, so that sort of, they were like, yeah, let's just do this because it makes more sense. So they are aware of it, and they do follow things where it makes sense. Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see if they're gonna shape the meta by dictating how their terrain should be used for their own tournaments. And then what will be interesting is, will the rest of the ITC kind of get on board with what Games Workshop is leaning towards and steering, or will they go, cool, these Games Workshop events are going to do it this way, but everyone else will just carry on with the status quo of how they want to do their events?
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Our statements are based on the notion that Games Workshop even want to change this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But I think, our fundamental problem with this system is, and what we see as long-term Games Workshop 40k players is I don't see a game that looks like 40k to me. I see a game that looks very different. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is in the eye of the beholder. For me, it feels like a bad thing. I like games of 40k that have some really interesting tactical moments, some fun, exciting, random instances, but more than anything that, are games that I want to take photos of and games that I want to be, immersed in and excited about. I don't feel like I get that from what I'm seeing from these things. But I do feel like Games Workshop understand and stride towards rewarding hobby. They want these games to be beautiful. That's why they make these beautiful miniatures. The idea is they want to see beautifully, fully painted armies battling on beautiful boards. Like, that's always been the hook, really. It's just that we've become a little bit too obsessed with the competitive aspect of it, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's why they added in the whole 10 points for a painted army, which I feel like was originally that I think was quite a controversial thing. I mean, potentially it still is to an extent. I think a lot of regular gamers, if you're just playing with your mate and I've got painted army and you haven't, or sometimes I haven't because I'm testing out my Marines, for example, we would just happily ignore that because it's like, oh yes, sure, I've got 10 extra points, but really we want to sort of see who won without that factoring in. But I do like the fact that they've done that to encourage that kind of hobby side. I like the fact that they've kind of given dual awards and that they have said that they're both equal. I imagine most people will be like, yeah, but we don't care about the hobby one. We just care about whoever won the actual tournament from a competitive sense. Regardless of that, I like the fact that they've given you 2 awards and they are saying they're weighted equally to push that hobby side of it as well.
And to be clear though, Phil, it's not that people don't care about who wins those hobby awards. It's just that there isn't a industry built up around those, right? In America, the podcasts, the media outlets, the influencers, with a number of exceptions, obviously, there's a number of really great hobby podcasts and hobby YouTubers and just general enthusiasts from America that do incredible content. But a huge amount of it is built around the competitive scene. There's so much competitive 40k content coming out of North America and Canada and so on. And I think that's the interesting thing.
I sort of disagree, actually. I think there is a whole industry set up. It's all around like commission painting studios and businesses like that. So I think there's a lot of painting hobby stuff. As you said, there are YouTubers and stuff as well. But again, that does tailor towards the people that want to play and compete and either have just a good tabletop sort of painted army because they don't care so much about the hobby, but it's not about people themselves investing the time to paint up their own models. It's about paying other people to do it for them.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is as well, though, with that kind of media coverage or that kind of industry is that there's no peaks and troughs to it, right? There's like a golden demon and then there's consistent performance, right? People kind of create their own events where they go, right, I've done a thing, and they come out and they go, look, everyone, I've made something awesome. And everyone goes like, yes, you have. That's incredible. Well done, you. And then it kind of consistently sort of feeds itself. Whereas obviously within the tournament scene, we have these big, pillars, these big landmark events where we can all kind of get together and go, oh, that person's the best and they did it using this is the best. Oh my God, let's speculate about that. Let's create some conversation. And it drives that. And then you get them in for interviews and then you get, content off the back of that. It's all, it's all speculative, but it's also all factual in as much as there's that.
Yeah, I think you do get, obviously the ITC do the hobby track, which I thought was a really good addition, where they are kind of trying to reward that kind of painting side to the hobby. And that's relatively new. So I think, maybe as time goes on, we see a bit more content from people about that. But as you said, yeah, you can't easily discuss how well an army was painted on a podcast, for example, versus on a blog where you've got photos or a YouTube channel where you've got videos. And quite often, even then, you don't see those photos. You might see a picture of an army that won at best, and it's probably a poorly taken photo, for example, but you get an overall impression of what it is. But normally online, when it comes to the events and who's won it, you're just looking at a text-based list, because that's what BCP caters for. It doesn't have an ability, as far as I'm aware, to like add photos of your army, for example, so people can actually see what it looks like, even though I think people find that stuff a lot more interesting or a lot more easier to visually digest. Even though sometimes I guess you could look at an army photo and still not tell what it's actually composed of, because you still need the army list to go alongside it.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying on that front. Yes, intriguing.
So one last thing though, did you want to talk about the event exclusive miniatures that you can purchase at these events, currently these free US tournaments, and potentially others that they might do around the world?
Yeah, of course. So we have an Age of Sigmar miniature, which I guess we'll talk about briefly. It's well good. I like it a lot. It's got a lot of attitude. It's got a really good sort of weight distribution in its pose. It's, that rather overplayed character wielding a mace or axe type weapon, holding it sort of, down by their waist, horizontally across. This Chaos Warrior wears it way better than the Adeptus Sororitas, whatever it's called, that they released images of recently that has the same pose. Do you know what that model's called?
Oh, not off the top of my head, I'm afraid. But you're right, it's a very similar pose, but this is a much better model. The shield on its back is pretty phenomenal. And I do believe it is a lady Chaos Warrior.
Yes. Yes, that is also something worth noting. So a female Chaos
called
Warrior.
Holger Clovenhorn, yes.
Very nice.
Very cool.
I mean, it's an excellent miniature. The shield is incredible. It's sort of oozing with a bit of that old kind of like 80s, 90s attitude.
100%. Very 80s realm of chaos. Yeah.
Do you remember the old My Pet Monster toys?
No, but if I saw a photo, I probably would say yes.
So the My Pet Monster toys were like large monster buddies. So basically it was like an oversized stuffed animal. But the thing that was cool about it was one, they were monsters, but two, they had these like orange handcuffs that you could break, and it would be like monsters breaking loose or whatever was the tagline of it. But the face of the main monster looks almost identical to the face that is on that shield, is where I'm basically going with it.
Oh,
so yeah,
very cool.
It is very, very cool. I do also like the strange kind of demonic taint that she's obviously dealing with. The idea that she's obviously now growing these absurdly humongous chaotic horns is pretty cool, and the kind of expression of the character is awesome. Do we know if there's a helmeted version of this figure, or is it only fleshy face?
Ooh, well, they've not said, and this is obviously the first time we've seen it. I could imagine they might have done a helmeted version as well, because they do sometimes do that. And looking at the model, the hair possibly is a separate piece. I would assume it is, but hard to say at this stage.
If they do offer a helmeted version of it, still with the hair, it'll be even better. But I think
how do you put on a helmet with a giant horn? I mean, obviously, we had this. Was it Sigmundsson? We had the same question, because he's got a helmet, hasn't he, with big horn? Or we just his hair?
I assume the way it goes is that you put the helmet on before the horns come in, but then by the time the horns arrive, it's impossible to take the thing off anymore. So it's going to be a stanky helmet, but it's there for life now.
True, unless it comes in like a front half, back half that goes around the horn.
Potentially, I suppose if she was having her war gear fashioned around her new horn additions, then maybe there's a way around it. But either way, I mean, yeah, I just think the model's great. I think the pose is great. I think the stature, the everything, it's great. It's a real good model. Well done, them. I would fly to America and take part in one of these events to get my hands on that model if I was a Chaos player in the realms of Chaos or whatever they live in Age of Sigmar.
Fair enough. And if you're a Necron player, would you fly out to buy the next miniature, which is it is Necron Lord Hasmotep, the Resplendent?
So I would pick up this Necron Lord if you threw it at me, and then I'd pick it up off the floor just to inspect what you threw, and then likely discard it with the same kind of maybe not the same kind of intentions, because I guess the scenario I've just played out is that you've kind of thrown it at me in some kind of humorous kind of prank way, or maybe some kind of anger-fueled rage. But whatever the case, I don't like this model. It just is doing nothing for me. I'm amazed that they have both managed to make a miniature appear entirely flat while also... It's just, if it's just the photos, then fair enough, but it is not a good model. It's, compared to other Necron Lords that are out there, this is pretty atrocious, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
I'm not a huge fan. There's definitely a few things wrong with it. It suffers from a very sort of flat look. I mean, I don't think it necessarily is, but it does feel reminiscent of old metal miniatures where they're very 2D. The arms are in alignment with each other. I think the back arm is slightly out, so there is that. I think the problem is here it's the heads, and he's got the resurrection orb, and he's holding it up aloft, but then the head is actually staring at his shoulder / armpit, and he's not actually looking up at the orb. Now, again, as you said, this could just be the pose. It could just be how the person's modelled the head, because you can tilt the head back and forth, maybe. I'm not a huge fan of the weird headband that he's wearing either, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me, per se. The other models just scream so much more detail and interest.
I mean, it looks like he has sellotaped some kitchen tongs to his head. Like, that is what that helmet looks like. It is terrible.
Yeah, I guess it's a crown, but it just doesn't quite work.
A kitchen tong crown. I mean, to defend the eye line, though, perchance he is looking down at the subject that he is resurrecting. Maybe that's the
through his arm.
Yeah, because he's got weird necron vision, so he can.
Maybe he's lofting it up above someone. And what would have been cool is if below that orb then was a sort of Evil Dead style Necron hand bursting from the ground.
Yes,
because he's actually literally resurrecting someron. Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be absolutely fantastic. I would be well in favor of that, because there's the discarded Necron skull, isn't there, on the base?
To one side, yeah.
But it's sort of positioned in such a way as it doesn't really, have much to do with what's going on in the pose and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty lackluster overall. Essentially, here's the thing, right? The first new Necron model we saw, the first new fancy Necron we saw, was Illuminors, however you say it.
Xeres.
And that is still, in my opinion, one of the best models in all of 40k. And I think it will be for a long time to come. It is near perfect in every conceivable way. It is an utterly gorgeous miniature. So for this to be in the same range as that is where I get confused. It's just, I mean, how you can go from a miniature like Illuminors to, I don't know, kitchen tong face. I just don't know. It's awful. It's and look, here's the thing. I reserve the right to change my mind should I see this model in reality and think, ooh, crikey, that's quite pretty when you see it in reality. But yeah, I'm not into it. I think the store events miniature, the Necron store event one, the store birthday one with the sort of weird sort of like hunched over thing. I think it's a cryptech rather than a lord. I don't mind him, but this one is
pretty good.
Yeah, this one is bad. I'm not
in a way,
at least on the photos.
Yeah, I guess maybe in a way it's good that the event-only ones are a bit Marmite, should we say, because then people won't feel bad about missing out on them.
Yeah, and I don't think you're gonna. I don't. Here's the thing, right? You are not really ever going to be falling over yourself to get another Necron Lord when you consider that you get a perfectly good Necron Lord in in the standard box, right? Or did they make that one of those weird ones that you can now only get in some absurdly priced set, right? So you can only get it in the Necron's Royal Court or whatever it's called, or did they actually make that Lord a separate mini that was available in some of the other start collecting boxes?
From the Indomitus box, do you mean, or
Not the Indomitus box. I mean the what do they call them? Elite Edition? Does that sound right?
well, that also would have been in an Indomitus mini, right?
Yeah, so it was an Indomitus mini, but it's now available in. I've just looked it up. It is Elite Edition. Yeah, look at that, brains.
Right.
But yeah, there is a Necron Lord in the Elite Edition, and that Necron Lord is better in every conceivable way, at least as a miniature, to this one. So why you would ever use this fella when the Necron Lord from Indomitus exists, I do not know. I guess it's because he's got a Resorb, but it can't be that hard to convert a Resorb onto this guy, surely.
Get a marble.
Exactly, just get a marble. Done. Easy peasy, mate. So yes, no. Again, beautiful Chaos Warrior, unimpressive Kitchen Tong Necron. What can you do?
Fair enough.
I don't know. Have I been too harsh, Phil? Where do you sit?
Well, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of him. Again, as you said, it could just be the photo, right, to an extent. And sometimes you do see these models in person; they look a lot better. As you say, though, I think the one from the Elite Edition, just looking at it now, is way better. It's got just a really cool pose, more stature. Super easy to swap out his hand to have a Resorb in it, though, I think, if you wanted him to. But always good to have variants. I mean, if you're a Necron player, you might love this model and think it's the bee's knees, in which case knock yourself out and get it if you're in America. Or hopefully, I think what's more interesting is, when will they do something similar in the UK? And if they do, will it just be a Warhammer World event, or will they do several events around the country? Like, will they do one up in Scotland? Will they do one down south? Will they do others? Or would it just be Warhammer World events? Will they do them in Europe, for example? It'd be interesting to see what they do there.
Yeah, it certainly will be. I mean, I'll be intrigued to see if they started rolling out events across Europe, because, the European scene seems like the least populated, as it were. It feels like Australia, the UK, America, obviously Canada. They're the areas where you're seeing a lot of tournaments and a lot of activity. But maybe Europe's got a good scene. Maybe I'm doing it an injustice. Obviously, if you are in mainland Europe and you go to a lot of tournaments in France or Italy, Spain, Poland, Gibraltar, wherever you may be, Gibraltar. Oh yeah, Gibraltar, fair enough. But yeah, then it'd be interesting to see what the scene's like out there. Obviously, we know from back and forth conversations we've had with Toke over the years that they do some things up in Sweden. So yeah,
I think it's Finland.
Oh, is he in Finland?
Hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, Toke. I didn't realize that you were in Finland. I just assumed it was. The
Scandi countries.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? There was three things going through my mind when I said that. One was don't say Switzerland, and then two, don't get it even worse and say Swindon. That's always the dangerous game that my brain plays with me every time I've got to remember. But there we go. Sorry, Toke. I didn't realize the error of my ways. Whatever the case, I reckon that'll probably do for all of that, unless you want to talk about the fact that there's a new GT pack coming soon. I don't know if there's much that we can even talk about at this point.
Well, it's coming out the week after the Admech Codex, so next week I'm sure we'll be talking about the Admech Codex. The week after we'll be talking about the GT mission pack. It's interesting that it's come out already. I think that's probably a good thing, although for most people, especially in the UK, you've probably not really played much with your old one. Because you just haven't been able to play all that many games lately, at least in person. So yeah, they've just talked about how they're updating the secondaries, for example, to improve them, to bring a bit more balance to them. So the secondary objectives that you wouldn't normally pick, they've made better. They've given a couple of examples. My favorite one is probably that they've renamed deploy scramblers to retrieve Octarius data, which just rolls off the tongue with complete ease. And I'm sure people won't just homebrew that to just say retrieve data all the time, but something like that. So deploy scramblers is something I like to do quite often, but it's an all or nothing 10 points, whereas now you've got to score it by being in multiple table quarters, and it sounds like it's a progressive one, so you'll get so many points each time you do it in each table quarter. So potentially harder to do, but might score you more points. I think that's probably a good one. So yeah, they seem all right so far from what they've teased.
Yeah, I think again, as always is the way with the 40k editions and the chapter approved and the grand tournament packs, as I guess they're called now. We tend to get to a situation where we find ourselves with a really good game for about a year, and then they throw a load of mad stuff against the wall when they come up with Psychic Awakening and the like, and then they reset it all when they do a new edition in 3 years' time. So I am looking forward to this next GT pack potentially being quite a compelling, interesting game, and then having it, turn into probably the most interesting version in 2022, and then having it all being completely ruined just in time for a new edition in 2024. Such is the cycle. God bless them. So, all right, cool. That'll do, I reckon, mate. Unless there's anything else you were dying to say about the competitive side of 40k. You're going to be going out to any events should the opportunity arise in the future?
Well, something I've not actually told you yet. So No Retreat 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't get in.
I heard that. Yeah, is this where you say you actually did?
Well, no, I've made it to the reserve list, of which I believe there's only 10 people. So relative exclusivity. To an extent, nice to know I've made the we like you but not that much aspect of the how I got on. So who knows? There are normally dropouts, maybe depending on the COVID situation and how many people drop out. I might be going in the end after all.
There you go. What a great way of making you feel special, Phil. There you are. You're in the we like you but not that much setting, as you just correctly said.
I'll take
interesting.
I'll take that.
Oh, totally, mate, totally. It does continue to amuse me with that event, just from the perspective that they may as well just turn around and tell everyone that they just want their friends to come. Like, why don't they just do that? But I suppose they don't make any money if they don't make you all feel like you're getting something special. No,
but in their defense, I would say 80% of the people going this year are all completely brand new people. So it's not like it's relatively reoccurring people. And it's weird because obviously when I first started out, I went to No Retreat 8. And that was all, lots of established players having gone there, and I was, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, going, "Ooh, what's this thing? Oh, hello, people!" And now I feel like almost like a seasoned veteran, having gone to 3 events so far. So with this one, I really wanted to go because it was, number 10. It was like their big one, as they were advertising it as. But at the same time, I don't feel too bad not going because I feel like I've had my fair share of going to these events, and it's fair that other newer players get to also experience it because it is such a fun tournament and event. So I think it's fair enough that I don't get to go, but they are, I really enjoy hanging out with the people there. There's lots of people like Toke will be going, assuming he can get his flights because he qualified. So I would love to go just to meet people that I've met at previous events, but also people like, Pardo, Chris and DC and the SN Plus or SN crew. It's all great to see them again and get to hang out with them. So I won't say no, given the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, mate. I mean, who would in that sense? I guess when we'll when will they tell you? Is there a cutoff for being included?
Oh, do you know what? I don't actually know. I presume it's literally probably up until I think it's maybe like a week or two before the event, because people could drop off at all sorts of time. Although I think the closer it gets, I think they normally have some local players sort of on reserve for those last minute dropouts. Because obviously people need to book flights and stuff. So yeah, I'm not actually sure. But I think if, my plan, and I've always still had this intention, is to take my Minotaurs, because I've been there quite a few times with my Krieg. I thought, if I'm going, I sort of feel like I need to take a new army. So even if I did qualify and didn't have my 2,000 points of Minotaurs painted up, I sort of feel like I shouldn't go, as much as this pains me. But I sort of only really want to go with a new army. I don't want to turn up for a fourth time with not the same army, but a twist on the same faction at the very least.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. Well, it'd be a good incentive for you, right? Just keep plugging away, mate. Get it done.
Exactly.
Get
Slowly
it done.
Powering through those 30 guys of intercessors that I'm painting up.
It's a thing of beauty. All right, pal. Well, there we go. Let's move on now to whatever it is that we decide that comes next. Transitional noise. Woo! And that, Phil, believe it or not, is the end of the show. Although, obviously, it's not really the end of the show. Although, potentially, we're not going to talk for as long as we might do otherwise. Because this week, we didn't bother preparing any kind of topics because there weren't any sort of specific things that we felt like we were going to talk about. Thus, we didn't throw any community questions out there. So we don't really have anything to respond to. There have been some general questions that have been thrown around lately. I don't know whether it's worth addressing those, although I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head. We're just going to do a little bit of a wrap-up chat and see how it went. We did the rapid-fire wargaming thing, right, Phil? We said that at the start. We shielded that as best we could, put it at the top of the show. That was fun, though, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, hilarious. It was also my first game of 40k all year. So, nice to finally be rolling some dice again.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, it was a great time. So we went down to Kent somewhere where those guys are based. Hell of a drive. The M25 was in high spirits that day. We enjoyed a number of traffic jams on the way there. But it was all worth it because, it ended up being a really great game. It was one of those mad ones where time completely lost all relevancy as we started at around, 2? And then we finished at about 8:30. But didn't really realize where any of that time had gone.
No, I know. And then it somehow got edited down to, I guess, a 2-hour video.
Yeah,
so there was obviously a lot of just general chit-chats.
Yeah, there was a lot of bants in between things. And, Phil knows the guys from Rapid Fire before, before playing that game against them. And obviously I've known them through chatting to them about building up to this, and I'd actually gone down there before and played a battle report with them a week earlier, but the amusing thing that occurred was when I went down there, I made a really bad rules blunder, and with that rules blunder, even though when you actually look back at the video footage it wouldn't have affected the outcome in any meaningful way anyway, it was decided that they wouldn't air that, and then me and Phil would turn up and do the doubles. I feel like it was more because of the fact that that game was me just smashing the crap out of them. I mean, I'll spoil that bat report if they decide to release it at some point. It literally was a 2,000 point game where I killed Tom's entire army and he didn't kill one model. So, even with the slight, mistake that I made, I feel like it was so one-sided, it wasn't worth putting out there, right?
Yeah, I think people should, if they do want to see it, go onto our battle report where it was Lookout Service Rapid Fire Wargaming, leave a comment with the hashtag release the Dan cut, and let's see how many of you actually put that comment in there, and maybe we can persuade them, because I think they're on the edge. I think they're on the edge where we can persuade them to release those battle reports of you.
The mistake I made, though, by the way, dear listener, was I was using the Custodes Aquilon's Shield host, and they have a stratagem where you can tank the wounds from one model in one unit for an Imperium character. They have since FAQ'd this rule to state that you can't perform this stratagem on a character model that has the vehicle keyword. So I was using this 1CP stratagem against a Tau commander with 4 fusion guns, where I basically took those 4 fusion guns and passed them over to my Custodes shield captain rather than having it hit my Knight Castellan. Now, as it transpired, I only rolled 4 inbuns for my saves, which basically meant that had I not even done it, it wouldn't have affected the outcome, because basically the Knight Castellan had a 4 inbun because of Iron Bulwark. But it is what it is. The mistake was made. And I feel like that, with the combination of smashing up Tom real bad, led to them deciding that maybe they shouldn't put that one up. But they put up the one that of me and Phil playing, and it was a great time. And I think in a lot of ways, it's a much better battle report because it's a lot more back and forth. It's a real, it was a real
down to
game.
the wire, basically.
Oh, it really does. It really does. It was an absolute head scratcher. Some stuff went our way perfectly. Some stuff went their way extraordinarily. And it was just one of those games where it was just mentally draining, right? It was one of those ones where me and Phil were doing everything we could to squeeze everything out of it. So yeah, it was a hard fought game, and we hope that you enjoy watching it, and you can come back and talk to us about the outcome and how you thought we performed. Maybe give us some tips. We're always looking to improve, right, Phil? Maybe we could learn some tactical things.
Speak for yourself. By all means, people should let us know what they thought about it. Just in general, as well. It was interesting. That was like my first rodeo with Krieg since the Imperial Armor Compendium had come out. So it was interesting to try out the new rules. Obviously, I still stand by my statements that the regiment trait is a bit rubbish. The actual units aren't too bad. They just perform very differently from how they performed, or their roles that they were performing in the previous edition. So there is a bit of a switch up in terms of what different things are using. So like engineers, they're pretty good, but they're really good at killing infantry. They're not really good at killing monsters, or tougher, toughness 4, toughness 5 units, which is what they were really there for before, for example. But I will say no more because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, it was really interesting. It did sort of bring back some of my lust for life for wanting to play Guard and be like, get some more games in with them, even though I'd officially retired them for this edition until a new codex comes out and I was going to concentrate on my Minotaurs. But they're still not quite battle ready unless I'm doing 500-point games. So I had to dust them off for this game, which was, good fun.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I completely agree with you about the Krieg regimental doctrine, although, I acknowledge that when we talked about it initially, I was seeking to try and, talk through some of the positive attributes of it. But yeah, the things that make Krieg interesting are those specialist units, and Death Riders are very, very durable now. I've seen those Death Riders being used in a few different games that I've witnessed or played in, and they're very, very, very durable. They're definitely not as punchy as they used to be, but they are what they lack in strength. They make up for in defenses massively. And yeah, the Grenadiers or the engineers, were also really impressive in performing their function. I think Krieg got some really interesting stuff going for them. Let's just hope that at some point in the future they give them a regimental doctrine that better showcases their capabilities as an army. Because I think the funniest thing about those about the one of the 2 aspects of the regimental trait was that Phil, I think, actually forgot on occasions to do the whole rolling to see if he shoots after things die scenario. I think I reminded you about it in one instance, but I think there was another where we just sort of forgot about it altogether. Not that it would have really made much of a difference to things, but it was one of those scenarios that was kind of interesting. But...
Yeah, I think that's just one of those learning curves when rules change for your army, that it's quite easy to forget all the changes. So, and you kind of get carried away as well to an extent. But also, yeah, because of the way the vehicle keywords work, it doesn't make too much difference, especially when you've got blast weapons. You're not able to always shoot them, for example. And you're shooting them on your lowest bracket. So, yeah, I don't think they make too much difference. I think the way that works well is if you have lots of artillery, because they don't degrade. So you're always shooting at your maximum ballistic skill. And hopefully that artillery isn't locked in combat because it's out of line of sight at the back of the board, for example. Well, it's in line of sight of something because it's getting killed. But yeah, potentially I think that's the way to make that work, which I don't think works very well for all Krieg armies, especially mine, because while I have artillery, I tend to lean more towards Lehman Russes and more tanks in general. I think I'd rather they almost ditch the modifier for combat attrition and they just give you +1 weapon skill instead. I think Krieg players would be way more happier with that than with their kind of classic cult sacrifice rule, which was all about ignoring leadership and stuff like that.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there's definitely ways to improve them, right? And hopefully there'll be an opportunity to do that in the future, should and when they revisit the Guard Codex. If it is that Krieg managed to get in there as a actual regiment, that would be quite incredible. But we'll wait and see, right? It's a while to wait, I imagine. I mean, as we've seen,
probably 2022 at this rate.
I would say so, mate. I mean, well, here's the thing, right? We know what the rest of this year is realistically going to look like. It's going to be Orcs, Sisters, Thousand Suns, Grey Knights. And have I missed anything there? We got Abmech.
Black Templars has been rumored, but nothing official.
It's weird though, right? Because Black Templars were a thing that was being rumored a little while ago, and then it just didn't turn into anything. So I'm sort of almost at the point now where I'm like, that's probably not happening anymore. That's probably one of those things that just people were saying. I mean, obviously, if it does happen, fantastic. But it just, it seems like there's been lots of ample opportunities to announce them, and it hasn't happened. So I can't imagine it's. But maybe it will. Who knows?
Yeah,
right?
It'd be interesting to see how it ramps up in terms of releases, because obviously it had a bit of a break last month, and now they're sort of getting back to a normal schedule. And obviously with AOS 3 being the big summer push, I imagine we won't see much in the way of 40k for at least a month or more. Maybe that's not true. Maybe they will still sprinkle in the codex releases in between, potentially just because they've got so much catch up to do that they might try and push them out at the same time as AOS when they might not otherwise. It'd be interesting to see how many more codexes they'll be getting out this year. That will sort of determine, I guess, what happens for what will be available next year and how long it will take them to get all the codexes out. The big kind of Christmas releases will be interesting one as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'd be interested to see how it goes. Whatever the case, I would be very happily surprised if the Guard got a book this year. I think in order of my priorities at the moment, at least where they sit today, I feel like Chaos Space Marines are most in need of a book. And then I feel like Chaos Demons are also then in there. And then I think it comes down to Guard. I think it's like literally like, but I feel like Guard and Demons are in the same sort of vein where they've got viability still. I mean, Chaos Space Marines are just ruined. They're awful, and they will continue to be awful. Although, aren't they getting rules in Book of Fire?
No, that's Demons, because Be'lakor
it's just Be'lakor
coming with a demon. It's coming with a Demon Chaos Marine detachment. So,
gotcha.
Chaos Marines will be in there in some form. But I wouldn't have thought they'd be adjusting any data sheets. So I imagine it will mostly, a bit like what we got from Metallica, either as a supplement or more likely a Regiment of Renown. So just some bonuses, some negatives potentially for building an army around that, which I think will be interesting. But I think that means there won't be a Demon Codex for a long time if Be'lakor's coming in the Book of Fire.
Yeah.
But he obviously will come in the Demon Codex as well, much further down the line.
I'd assume so. I mean, would it kill them though, just to put a little box somewhere that says Chaos Space Marines 2 wounds? Just do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, so the Grand Tournament pack's coming out, but also so is the Minotaur manual or something with points cost adjustments. Very rarely they do datasheet updates within that. I don't think they ever do it. They sometimes do online with FAQ, so maybe there'll be more FAQs added. Maybe Chaos Space Marines will go down in points by quite a bit to make up for it. And this is a conversation we've had before. Should these points adjustments be factoring in that an army is not getting their codex for a while?
I'd hope so. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it didn't, but I feel like at the moment, Chaos Space Marines need to be sub 12 points. I mean, 12 or under. Like, at the moment, they are just abysmal. I'm trying to think of things that are like 10 points to try and forge a comparison. I feel like, what's a 10-point model in 40k these days? Like a Scion? Is a Scion 10 points?
Scion's around that. I think Acolytes for Inquisition at 8.
Inquisition or Acolytes are definitely 10 points. I was looking at them the other day, and they get hotshot las guns and things.
Do you know what, though? One of my Acolytes, my first Acolyte model I made, Manfred Wilhelm, he's got a Stormbolter mounted on his shoulder. And guess what Acolytes, what weapons they can't take anymore?
Is it Stormbolters?
Phil? It is Stormbolters. So it's like, thanks, Games Workshop, that one Acolyte model I made.
I mean, to be fair though, they didn't sell you that, did they? You made it.
But well, they sold me multiple boxes of stuff to make that model. They didn't sell me a.
Well, I don't think that was their intent, though, was it?
No, I know it's just a bit odd that out of all of the, the things to get rid of, it's like I just so happen to be that one. It's like you can still get needle pistols. Needle pistols aren't even a thing, with the exception of Necromunda, like Escher gangers. It's like, but Stormbolters, they're pretty prevalent, but no, can't have them.
The thing I just remembered as well, although I didn't just remember it, I remembered on Sunday when I walked into my garage to put my stuff away. And I saw lovingly laid out on top of my table in my garage, Rogue Trader that I was supposed to give you on Saturday. But there you go.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to presume. I was like, oh, Dan's not giving it to me. Oh, okay.
Did you actually think that?
Well, I was like, I didn't want to be like, oh, Dan, come on, Rogue Trader, pass it over. Come on.
Should have asked. I completely forgot because obviously you turned up and then we pretty much we sat around, watched like some stupid show or whatever it was, or we watched some YouTube. I can't remember now. But then literally we left because we were kind of I got to that point where I was like, oh God, we got to get going. And then I went and then I was like, oh, yeah, but it completely left my mind the whole day. And then as I got back and put my stuff away, I was like,
well, it's an excuse for me to come and play some games with you, see.
Exactly, mate. Come on by. Anytime, mate.
Go down.
It's
get
here.
Some Crusade done.
Exactly, and then take some Rogue Trader away with you.
Exactly.
Nice. Wonder if anyone's in the market for Kingdom Death Monster. I really want to get rid of that as well.
I think you've plugged it a few times.
Yeah, someone say if you want to buy Kingdom Death Monster because I don't want it.
I mean, this isn't a Kingdom Death Monster podcast, so that's mine.
No, I know.
Well, you might not be doing too well in the market, but maybe
we
need to come up with some good conversion ideas for 40k with them, and then
it's a waste of time. Honestly, I'm at this point where I might just throw it away, give it to Oxfam or something. It's just literally like,
ooh, that'd be good because people do enjoy a good Oxfam, charity model find.
Exactly. I mean, that would be a hell of a find. That's like it cost me like 400 quid. I just literally have no use for it.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, indeed. What else am I trying to get rid of? Oh, I got those Age of Sigmar trading cards. I got the Founders pack of that. I don't want that anymore. I bought that.
Is it still going?
No. Well, it's funny. I bought it before I'd played it, and then I played it, and then at like an event where they were showcasing it like Warhammer Fest or something. And then I was like immediately regretting the fact that I bought it. I was like, oh, it's rubbish. So, this isn't Magic the Gathering. This is terrible. I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, well, there is that Magic the Gathering 40k crossover that's going to be happening.
Yes, there is. Yeah, that'd be exciting to see that play out. As I say, I want to see planeswalkers in Age of Sigmar. That's what we want. Not that that's 40k, but it's a reasonable comparison. Could happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. That's enough of an outro segment, I reckon, Phil. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to highlight? Anything that else is going on in your brain today?
Oh, not
Don't force
really.
yourself.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
No, good. It always sort of feels like, unless we do one of those mad outros like I did last time, where I said that's enough, Phil, it's done. It always sort of ends on this real kind of like, yeah, all right, cheers.
Oh wait,
See ya.
we've got a. Oh, I would say we should be doing a tease for what we're doing next week because we actually know.
Oh, what, the AdMech week?
Like, yeah, we're talking about AdMech. Yeah, imagine
exactly. What a tease.
are our brains going to explode reading the AdMech rules?
I heard that Ruststalkers are good. Shock horror.
Oh, that unit that wasn't good but is now good, which is how our current theory is playing out.
Apparently, Ruststalkers are mad.
Yeah, I heard that Cataphrone Breachers are basically bikers now, but still can pass. They get the breachable keyword, so they can still pass through buildings as if they're infantry.
Well, I mean, the clue's in the name, right? Breachers. That's how it is.
Well, yeah, good point, actually. Yeah, fair enough.
There you go. Simple when you think about it. Whatever the case, I'm sure they're going to be hilarious, and I'm sure all of those people that have been chasing the meta will quickly jump across from Drukhari to AdMech. Such is the way.
I don't think they will.
You don't think so? I think they're likely to be a very good Drukhari, anti-Drukhari list, potentially.
I think they will, but I think they're going to be more complicated and more expensive to pick up and play and get an army going. So I think, yeah, I don't think you'll see a huge swathe of people switch over in the same way that Drukhari did.
It is true, though. I mean, the thing that was a really, really good catalyst for Drukhari was their combat patrol box, right? Because their combat patrol box, you literally only had to buy like 2 of those, and you more or less had all of the components required to have a competitive Drukhari list, whereas the Adeptus Mechanicus combat patrol definitely isn't going to give you a competitive Adeptus Mechanicus list, unless of course the Honor Dune Crawler is absolutely mad.
Yeah, but it's weird. It feels like the Honor Dune Crawler was their big like shooty vehicle, and it feels like that role has now been replaced by the variant. I can't remember what it's called. It's the floaty gun platform on the hover vehicle. That isn't the troop transport one. Scorpius Destroyer.
Yeah, something like that.
Disintegrator, yeah, that's it. It feels like that's now the main shooty platform, and it's like, no, it should be the Dune Crawler. Like, it seems weird. I'm not a huge fan.
It depends what rules they give the new the Dune Crawler. The Chicken Walkers, the
Dune Striders or the Iron Striders.
Iron Striders. That's what they're called. They've got relatively reasonable guns, so maybe there'll be something for that. But this is
apparently they're mad good.
Are they mad good? Oh, that's going to be exciting. But yeah, the problem is again though, right? Is
do you know why they're mad good? Because they cost about 30 quid to buy for one.
Yeah, that'll probably be the thing. I've just looked them up on Games Workshop's site. £32.50
for one.
For one.
Yeah.
For one. Coming squads are free. Buy 9. Come on, everyone.
Exactly.
Buy 9. But here's the thing: Skitarii Rangers, £27.50, right? So, near as damn it, 30 quid. Maybe it's 22 quid when you buy it from a third party reseller. But yeah, let's say 25 quid for argument's sake. That's 25 quid for what is today 90 points. I mean, that is an expensive army, right? Like, you're going to have to buy a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, on average, how much do you think it costs to make a 2,000 point army?
Well, it used to be years ago that it was like £1 per point, is it? Where you get 1,000 points for 100 quid or something. But these days, it's more in the banding of like 150 quid for 1,000 points, right? Because combat patrol is 500 points or whatever it is. So yeah, 2 combat patrol boxes and you've got 1,000 points, which isn't a particularly great 1,000 points, but it is. But that's 170 quid, and that's the deal. So yeah, I guess it must be like 200 quid for 1,000 points now.
Yeah. So for what? Yeah, because I was looking at the Goonhammer review of the AdMech, and I totted up the price because they're saying it was quite expensive. I totted up the price of one of their lists that they came up with at the bottom, and it was something like 600 quid or so for the 2,000 point army. Bearing in mind that a bunch of that stuff you can't buy because it's just out of stock at the moment.
Yeah, no, they are understandably being very popular at the moment, which is to be expected, right?
Yeah, I mean, potentially if and when the Imperium magazine comes out, that is going to have a lot of AdMech stuff in. A lot of the slightly more expensive ones like Catron Breaches and I think Iron Striders were in there as well. So maybe everyone can collect a nice AdMech army whenever that magazine gets released, which is interesting because obviously they did their like little demo run where they got people to order and place their orders, but they only actually sent it out to people in like one region, I think. And since then, there's really been nothing about it.
No, I'm subscribed to it. I'm just waiting for them to get around to sending it to me. And then I'm intending to cancel it, but I can't cancel it until they send it because it's something to do with the way that I can't cancel it until I know what my subscription number is. Some weird sequence. Anyway, what was I going to say? So I think the stuff that's sold out online, though, by the way, is likely sold out online because they're likely to be repackaging it. Was my assumption.
Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, whatever the case, that'll do, Phil. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about AdMech in the next episode. So until then, mate, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.